The Echo of Red Lights. Chapter 1. A City That Doesn't Blink. The sirens spread across the city like a flock of metallic birds, scattering the night into shards of blue and red. Even at 2 a.m, Harbor City didn't blink. It stared back, light-struck and glass-eyed. Billboards prattled, windows glittered, and traffic signals pulsed their patient catechism. Red, red, red. Stop and look at what we're trying to tell you. Detective Quyen Tran slid out of the unmarked Ford and felt Harbor's wet breath lift the collar of her coat. The rain had the thin, persistent quality of a spray bottle, beating on her eyelashes and the lacquered black of her hair. She tucked a loose strand behind her ear and looked up at the mouth of Lion Street Station, a yawning concrete esophagus coughing commuters into the night. Police tape ribboned the steps. It fluttered like an invitation. "You picked a hell of a place for a stroll," said Sergeant Ezra Pike, her partner, arriving with 2 paper cups steaming in his hands. "I was asleep like a normal person," Quyen said, accepting the coffee. "Then an overachiever rang my phone. Overachiever is one word." Ezra squinted down into the station throat, his cheeks rough and rosy in the rain. He had the bulk of a tugboat and the patience to match. "You see the tip we got?" The dispatch note said we were called by a viewer. Quyen took a sip and grimaced. "Viewer? Like internet." The night desk thought it was a prank, until the second call came from a city councilman who said his nephew was watching too. "Watching what?" Ezra's eyes drifted toward the stairs. "You won't like it." "Define like." "You'll see." He lifted the tape. They went down together, boots clicking on wet stone, the station's halogen glare whitening their faces. The platform smelled like metal shavings and old gum. A train idled a few tracks over, its windows smeared with rain. Beat cops stood clustered around a pillar with a big red bee painted on it. The bee was bleeding. No, not bleeding. Painted, thick crimson lines had been brushed around the letter, amplifying it, making it into a target, a logo, something. Someone had taken their time. Quyen approached the scene and saw the body. He was propped against the pillar, legs splayed as if the ground had pulled him down gently. The victim wore a dove-gray suit that had once meant money. Now it was soaked dark where his chest met his shirt. The hands were open and empty on his thighs, fingers stiff with rain. On his face, a plastic mask shaped like a flattened smiley, dragged crookedly from one ear and plastered against his jaw. No wallet on the ground, no phone glinting in a wet puddle. His right shoe was scuffed raw, the leather stripped like old paint. Quyen kneeled, careful not to smear what was left of the scene. "Name," she said. "Still working on it?" Ezra replied. "No ID in his suit. No keys, but his cufflinks? Custom. Monogram is an A and a C, woven like a knot." "Couture," Quyen murmured. She could feel, faintly, the tremor of the train. "Money, or someone who borrows it. The mask, Q. You see the sticker?" She did. On the back of the mask, near the elastic garrote, a small square of black and white. Not a sticker, a code. Quyen leaned closer. A QR code, the kind you scan with a phone. She'd seen them pasted on menus, flyers, donation boxes, homeless signs promising a stable crypto wallet. She'd never seen one glued to a corpse's face like a dare. "CSU already captured it," Ezra said. "The link's still live." It was the thing the viewers called about. Quyen straightened, and even the platform, raw with a hum of fluorescence, could not cut the quiet that dropped between them. Where did it lead? An account on YouTube. Her gut dropped like a thrown stone. Of course. The channel's new. 4 days old. Minimal metadata. 100 to 1,000 subscribers as of an hour ago. Someone paid for promotion or someone very good at seeding. The video linked from the code is titled Pilot Red Light. It went live at 1:48 a.m. Ezra looked at his watch. 15 minutes before the first 911 call. Quyen surveyed the scene. The red paint around the B on the pillar. The suit. The mask with its cheap grin. The code. "Stop and look at what we're trying to tell you," she said, more to herself than to Ezra. "Where's CSU now?" "In the tunnel beyond track 2. There's something else down there you're not going to like." "I didn't like the first thing?" He tipped his head. "Come see the second." They followed a tech through a maintenance door and into a tunnel where orange lamps gave everything the color of nicotine. The walls were marked with the city's hieroglyphics, stenciled numbers, arrows, warnings in faded tape. The floor here was less clean, puddles and oil peeled from gravel, and the rails sang a small song under Quyen's soles. The tech, a woman with powder blue nails and the stillness of a surgeon, pointed to a concrete alcove ahead. "There," she said, "under the lamp." On the wall, someone had mounted an old television screen. Not flat screen, the square-jawed kind that looked like an antique without the charm. Its glass face was cracked in the corner and held together with gray tape. Beneath it, perched like a pet at attention, was a webcam set into a chrome half-sphere. "Live camera," Ezra said. "It was broadcasting." "Broadcasting what?" Quyen asked. The tech picked up a tablet, pulled up a paused frame. On the screen was the pillar with the big red B and the man in the suit, his body still warm and slack, his mask shining with a film of water. The camera had been placed to frame the scene like a stage. Even the red paint on the B had been art-directed to catch the light. The video's timer in the corner read 0 hours and 1 second. Another thumbnail showed the timer at 0 hours 5 minutes and 17 seconds, then 0 hours 12 minutes and 43 seconds. The chat box on the right blazed with comments that were aggressively enthusiastic or coyly horrified. Emojis popped like confetti, and usernames flashed past. PH4NT0M, JX, Citywatcher, Blue Marlin, The Real List. Some commenters had donated money, little rainstorms of dollar signs descending as messages pinned themselves to the top. "Did the camera catch the killer?" Quyen asked. "At 1:41 a.m. the stream starts. It's empty platform. Rain, our guy live. He's breathing shallow, like he's listening to something in his head. He touches the mask once. Then he tugs at it like he wants to take it off but can't. At 1:44 a.m., he shudders, looks to his right. Then the tech hesitated. Then he stops, falls against the pillar. No visible assailant. No one enters the frame. It's like the scene is waiting for its antagonist to arrive, and he never does. Or he's already in the frame, Ezra said, or he never needed to be. The tech shifted the tablet so Quyen could see. Poison? A delayed something? We'll know after autopsy. But the weird part isn't the death. It's what happens at 1:47 a.m. The paused frame showed the dead man slumped against the pillar. The chat scrolled like a blizzard. Then the frame flickered once, twice, then cleared to a new image. The camera stayed still. The change came from the broadcast. The scene had been overwritten by a pre-recorded clip, a curtain falling on reality. In the new image, A red light blinked in the top right corner like a heartbeat. A glossy black title card appeared, serif letters, cinematic white on the red, pilot. Then a subtitle, as precise as a poison formula, red light. A voice machined through a vocoder, male and female, and no one at once filled the tunnel with its snake oil charisma. "Good evening, Harbor. Welcome to the show." Quyen didn't react visibly, but something in her neck stiffened. She knew that kind of voice, designed not to be a person, designed to be a story. "We're not going to call you viewers," the voice said. "You're participants. Every city needs an audience. Tonight, your red lights are on. You have watched a man die. You are wondering how. Don't rush. This isn't a speed date. It's a season." The camera cut to a close-up of the pillar's big red B, now artfully framed as a bloody initial. "Some of you will recognize our guest star. He was born with a passport in his mouth. He likes single malt and older women. He considered running for office and decided being the person who buys the office was more interesting. He also liked to play with other people's pension funds." The voice sounded amused. "You know the type," Ezra swore softly. "A financier, ACA. What's a harbor billionaire with those initials?" Quyen's mind ticked. Names bobbed up. She swatted them away. "We're not guessing on camera," she said. "What's the end of the clip?" The tech fast-forwarded. The title card dissolved to a list of names. It didn't linger long on any one. Ezra and Quyen caught pieces like confetti. The politician, the pastor, the artist, the cop, the fixer. Then the screen cut to black, and white letters floated up. "Next episode, green light, Thursday, 8 p.m. Scheduling," Ezra said wonderingly. "He's scheduling murders. He's scheduling stories," Quyen corrected. She stared at the dead man's shoes, the scuffed right leather, as if he'd kicked at something that wasn't there. "Is it a he?" the tech asked innocently. "Statistically," Ezra said. "Statistically, we say things that later make us look uncurious," Quyen replied. "Can we kill the stream?" Ezra asked. "Did we cut it off?" "Already done," the tech said. "But the video isn't gone. The channel's duplicating the stream, clipping it. Our takedown requests got siliconed into a queue that stretches to the moon." "So the city's audience is growing," Quyen said. She tucked her hands into the pockets of her coat and scanned the alcove. The camera sat there, a little metal cyclops. Quyen crouched and looked into it until her own face, ghosted and distorted, peeked back. The glass was clean. Someone had wiped it recently, right down to the factory smugness. Her own image, dark eyes and rain-gloss hair, hovered. If she'd been anyone else, she would have looked like a ghost, but she felt very alive, and that irritated her. Something inside had been roused from its chronic insomnia, and now it paced. It wanted to move. It wanted to drag secrets out by their hair. "Let's go back to the body," she said. On the platform, the inquiries spiraled outward. CSU was everywhere. Little flags of yellow, whispers of powder, photographs that sliced the scene up into clinical pieces. They'd bagged the mask, captured the code, peeled paint chips into vials. Quyen paced. "You know what bothers me most?" Ezra asked, trailing her. Coffee forgotten, hands jammed into his jacket. "Only one thing?" Quyen said. "The chat," he said. "The way they reacted, it was giddy. Like the city had been waiting for a new toy. People saying, 'Finally, something real. Finally, something worth watching.' They called him producer in the chat. Did you see that? Some guy typed, This producer got range, and it stuck. The producer, Quyen repeated. They're hungry. He can feed them, or they can feed him, Quyen said. She crouched by the dead man again. A CSU tech had peeled back the jacket. The wound was small, almost shy. A neat hole lower left thorax. A little black ring around it that made Quyen think of the scorch of an overcooked match. Not a knife, not a standard round. Contact wound? Ezra asked the tech. Don't think so. There's stippling, but not close enough to be contact. Weird tattooing pattern too, like a petaled thing. The tech unrolled a kit. We'll know more upstairs. Right now I can tell you what isn't here. No shell casing on the platform, no footprints that aren't rain distorted, and the camera's line of sight doesn't catch any entry or exit. So he died on camera, Ezra said, from a bullet we don't see, fired by a person we don't see, and it's nine. Or from something misnamed as a bullet, Quyen said. Ezra glanced at her. You and your words. Words matter. They tell you what someone thinks a thing is. If the producer says red light, he wants us to stop, to stare, to be trapped by the frame. The camera is a frame. This pillar is a frame. The mask is a frame for a face. And the code is a frame for the audience, Ezra said, getting it. A gate they walk through. Right. You're thinking poison. I'm thinking the delivery system we assume is the one that was used. If we assume gun, we'll look for guns. If we assume poison, we'll look for cups, needles, inhalants. But what if the delivery system was the frame itself? The mask. The mask, Ezra echoed. She looked at the elastic, strangling the little smile. There was residue on the inner lip of the plastic, a faint powder, not rain. The tech had swabbed it already. Quyen made herself not touch. Let's say our man knew something was wrong, she said softly. He reaches for the mask. He tugs. He doesn't go through with it because what? He's afraid? He thinks it's a prank? Or someone told him not to take it off? Someone, Ezra said. Someone like the producer. Quyen felt the pacing thing inside her lean against the bars. The QR code was glued on the outside, she said. You had to hold the mask to the camera to scan it, meaning you had to put the mask on, or you'd be scanning a mask in your hand while someone filmed you looking like the world's most gullible raccoon. He knew the rules of the show. He was playing to the camera. Mother of Ezra blew out his cheeks. You think we're dealing with our first victim who is also a collaborator? That's too tidy. Quyen glanced at the scuffed shoe, but I think he thought he could step into the frame and then step back out. Like everyone who ever agreed to appear on screen, Ezra muttered. Quyen stood, and the world tilted just enough for her to feel it. She remembered something from a year ago, the last case that had chased her into insomnia. An influencer whose followers had believed, truly believed, that they were solving a mystery together, while the influencer, in slow motion, set fire to her own life. Quyen had learned then that people believed anything if they could believe together. Community is a drug. Murderers know their chemistry. What's our timeline? She asked. Stream went live at 1:41. He dies at 1:44. The title card rolls at 1:47. At 1:48, the channel's community tab drops a post with a red dot. Caption reads, Red. At 1:50, the first call to dispatch. At 1:55, the city councilman calls because his nephew screen recorded it. And the body was left here this whole time, Quyen said, waiting to be found on schedule. Ezra's radio hissed. Tran, Pike, command wants a briefing upstairs, and there's someone you'll want to meet. Who? Ezra asked. The guy who found the mask, the voice said. He took it off the victim. Quyen and Ezra traded a look. They went up in the train hall, under a ceiling like a barrel vault. The city had reassembled itself into lines and faces and umbrellas. The press had arrived, their lenses peeking like swans. Command had pushed them back toward the ticket kiosks. In the middle of the hall, a man in a damp hoodie and a cheap beanie sat on a bench, hands sandwiched between his knees. He was pale with adrenaline, the sockets under his eyes purpled with a history of not enough. He looked up when Quyen approached, and in his pupils Quyen saw the reflection of the rotunda depicted upside down, the chandeliers, a crown on his irises. I didn't mean to mess anything up, he said before she asked. He was choking. Start from the minute you entered the station, Quyen said. There was no small talk in her voice. People like this appreciated skipping to the part where words mattered. I was delivering. He pointed to a battered red backpack. Late-night runs. It's good money if you don't think about your knees. I came down the steps, and there he was, sitting against the pillar, pulling at his face, like he couldn't breathe. He swallowed. I thought it was an attack, like some freak gas, like air was lava. He pulled the mask, and it snapped back, and he looked at me like I was a doctor who'd forgotten my bag. I ran over and tried to get it off. You touched the mask, Ezra said evenly. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize for trying to help, Quyen said. Did anyone stop you? Say anything? No. He made a sound like a word underwater. I pulled. The mask slipped. I got it off his chin. He inhaled like it hurt. Then the delivery boy took a breath so deep it trembled. Then he went slack. I thought maybe he was better until I saw his eyes. And the mask, Quyen said. Where is it now? They took it. He gestured toward CSU, the one with the purple nails. I put it down. I didn't throw it away or anything. But when I took it off, my phone buzzed. I didn't even think it was connected. The QR thing triggered. The video started playing on my screen. I didn't click. It just opened. My thumb must have done it. You scanned the code, Ezra said. You were the first viewer, I guess, the man said. He looked like someone who had accidentally set a house on fire by microwaving tinfoil. And then in the chat this name showed up. Welcome at Felix on Wheels. Thank you for delivering. It pinned my name to the top like I paid money. I swear I didn't pay them money. Quyen crouched so her eyes were level with his. Felix, what did the victim smell like when you got close? Smell like? His pupils jumped, replaying. Peppermint, or something burny, like when my cousin's vape leaks in his pocket. Sweet, then sharp. Chemical, Ezra said, mostly to himself. Felix, Quyen said, did you hear anything? A voice? A tone? A tone, he said, surprised. Yeah, like a mosquito inside a bottle. Hi. It stopped when I tore the mask. Quyen stood. Thank you, she said. Stay nearby. She pulled Ezra to the side, near the coffee kiosk whose shutters made a metallic sigh. Aerosolized compound in the mask, Ezra said. Triggered by, what? A frequency? A timer? The code? The code is marketing. The tone is the switch, Quyen said. Chemical micro-capsules in the plastic, released when the tone vibrates the material, or when the mouth opens, or when the elastic tightens. You're guessing. I am extrapolating from a system I cannot yet see. She looked up at the blackened windows that made the ceiling the city's night, full of reflections. But I know this. He wants us thinking in episodes, in seasons, which means he wants us to assume that the story is paced and plotted and we are trapped in his cadence. I don't want to be trapped. I want to get ahead. By doing what? By making him talk to me out of turn, Quyen said. By making him break character. Ezra opened his mouth to ask how, then shut it, because he remembered who Quyen was before the badge, the journalist who had burned a mayor's future by coaxing the truth out of a mic that had been declared dead. She knew how to talk to a performance until it said something unscripted. Command wants us, he said, and the press wants a statement. They can have the same truth, Quyen said. Tell them a man is dead. Tell them we have evidence and a camera and a channel. Tell them we're asking citizens not to share the video. Then watch them do it anyway. You think, if we ask the audience to behave, we stop understanding the audience? The briefing room was a makeshift situation center carved out of the station's old lunch counter. A map of harbor lay pinned to a corkboard, wards marked like puzzle pieces. An IT kid in a hoodie tapped at a laptop, fighting the platform's hydra heads. Every time he axed a mirror, two more grew. The lieutenant, a man who had never met a cardigan he didn't iron, turned to Quyen and Ezra with the face he reserved for the cameras he suspected were hidden in people's pockets. "What's our line?" he asked. "Minimal," Quyen said. "If we glamorize, he wins. If we ignore, he wins differently. We can't afford panic," the lieutenant said. "We need vigilance," Quyen said, "the kind that sees a mask as a weapon. Would you like to go on record with that?" "I'd like to go on record with a face that refuses to be flattered," Quyen said. "Put me in front of a podium, I'll give the city a tone the producer can't auto-tune." The lieutenant looked between her and Ezra. "Do it. 5 minutes. And MDT." As Quyen turned to leave the room, the IT kid clicked his tongue. Lieutenant? The channel just posted a new community update." Ezra leaned in. "Already?" The kid rotated the laptop. The community tab had a single post at the top, 6 minutes old. An image dominated the post, a traffic signal against a black background, its top bulb red, glowing. Underneath, white letters like frost. "Hello, Detective Tran." Quyen felt nothing for one precise second. Then she felt a needle of cold go in at the base of her skull, just enough to get her attention. The rest of the room made small sound swears, a chair's back squealing, the wet bulb hum of breath. "How does he know your name?" the lieutenant asked, unnecessarily. "Because I walked into his frame," Quyen said. "Because that's how frames work." The post refreshed on its own. The letters rearranged themselves. "Let's make a deal." "I don't like this," Ezra muttered. "Every time a man says deal in a tone like that, a snake grows legs." "Snakes with legs are lizards," Quyen said absently. The letters flickered again, as if they'd been typed by a patient child. New words formed. "If you solve this episode before Thursday, the next light stays green." The lieutenant said, "What does that even?" Quyen answered, "He means no one dies." The post gained a final line. It sounded almost friendly, parentheses of a smile none of them wanted. "Good luck. Every city needs a hero. Every hero needs a camera." Quyen closed her eyes and, for one breath, allowed herself the memory of her mother's voice on a phone line years ago, telling her that the city loved to watch but did not know how to listen. "All right," Quyen said, opening her eyes. "He poked us. We poke back." "How?" the lieutenant asked. We tell the city I need their help, Quyen said. We hijack his audience. We teach them to be more interesting than a murder. And if they aren't, then we show them what a camera is for, Quyen said. To show what someone didn't intend to show. I'd say Ezra stood a little closer, the way he did when he sensed the wind had decided to pick up and it might suit him to be a bulkhead. What are you thinking, Q? I'm thinking the red light means stop, Quyen said. But not for us. For him, he thinks he can flash the light and we'll do what he wants. Like trained dogs. We step into the intersection anyway. Into traffic. That's where the story is. She went to the podium. The city waited. Cameras up. Clicks in their throats. Good morning, she said. Her voice was steady. The night wasn't. I am Detective Quyen Tran of the Harbor City Police Department. A man was killed tonight in Lyon Street Station. A video was streamed online. We are investigating, and we will find who did this. I ask you not to share the video. I know what a difficult ask that is. Sharing feels like helping. It isn't. Watching without context is letting someone else write the story. If you saw something, if you know the man in the suit, if you recognize the mask, the paint, the laugh, the tone call us, if you watched the stream, we need your memory more than we need your clicks. Harbor City has a lot of lights. Tonight, I'm asking for your porch lights. Turn them on. Watch your neighborhood. Listen to your friends. The person who did this wants to be seen on their terms. Let's see them on ours. She ended there. The reporters shouted questions, their voices pitched like sale prices. Quyen stepped away, felt Ezra fall into step, felt a new message crawl up her phone screen like a silverfish hunting a crumb. Unknown number. You speak well on camera. She didn't stop walking. Trace, she said to the IT kid, who jogged. The kid already had the number half open, the trace spiraling to the VPNs like a dog nosing a maze. Unknown number. Do you want your next chapter sooner? Quyen's mouth made a half smile that looked like a dare. She typed with her thumb, Detective Tran. You're behind schedule already. I expected more from a producer. The typing bubble appeared, paused, appeared again. Unknown number. We're both producers. Isn't that the twist? Her phone buzzed once more. A video thumbnail unfolded 6 seconds long, taken from a height that made the city look like a board game. She tapped it. The red light pulsed. The camera panned. A rooftop door opened. A shadow crossed it. A hand, wearing a surgical glove, flicked a green lens cap off a camera. Underline. Thursday, 8 p.m. Stay tuned. She felt the city's breath gather and knew, deep in the machinery of her nerves, that sleep had evacuated her calendar. The city did not blink. Neither would she. Ezra, she said, already moving. Yeah? We're going to need a mask, she said. And a tone? It is no. Chapter 2. The sound that opens a door. Quyen didn't go home. Her apartment had white walls that wouldn't help. She and Ezra rode the lurching elevator to the city lab, passing floors where unslept grad students dreamed upright in chairs and suit jackets hung like molted skins. The corridor had that formaldehyde brightness particular to spaces where answers get teased from stubborn matter. Dr. Leon Park met them at the threshold of autopsy 2, eyes clear above her mask, black hair razored into a bob that made her look perpetually fresh from a decision. She lifted her chin at the clock. 3 a.m., she observed. You do like to visit when it's elegant. Amber, we bring gifts, Ezra said. proffering evidence bags, the mask, swabs from the elastic, a scrap of paint from the pillar's red halo. Another bag held the victim's cufflinks, a watch that had stopped 7 minutes after the stream began, and the scuffed right shoe wrapped separately like a separate story. Park's brows ticked when she saw the mask. "Tell me it wasn't on his face when you brought him in." "It wasn't. A good Samaritan beat us to it," Quyen said. "What do you see?" "What I see is less important than what I smell." Park leaned over the polyurethane, the way you lean over a flower first thing in spring. She didn't inhale. She tasted the air. Peppermint, concealing something mean. Your scene witness wasn't wrong. This scratch here on the inside lip, see? White bloom like talc. That's micro-encapsulate residue. Tiny spheres, brittle as pride. They break under stress, under sound, under heat. They love to hide in plastics, paints, adhesives. They keep their payload stable until the trigger arrives. "A tone," Quyen said. "Could be." Park guided the mask onto a tray like settling a child. "Or a temperature spike, or the sheer act of stretching the elastic. But your witness said he heard a tone, and you said the victim tugged at the mask, then stopped." She tapped her own cheekbone. "You ever wear a sheet mask? You think it's self-care until you read the ingredients and realize you've paid for perfume and a hope. Imagine this, but with sharper ambition. The mouth is a door, Detective Tran. The mask is a key." "And the lock?" Ezra asked. "Trachea, bronchi, alveoli. The lungs are always the first to say hello to whatever we let in. Our body is a home with too many welcome mats." Park looked through the glass at the body on the table. "Let me get him ready for you." She left them to the rustle and silver metal clink of a body prepared for questions. Ezra leaned against a wall labeled with a poster about latex allergies and watched Park through the window. "You ever think," he murmured, "that murder is just a person refusing to accept the body's schedule?" Quyen's gaze settled on the shoe bag. "Everything is a schedule," she said, and unsealed the bag. The right shoe had the roughened snout of something meant to scrape. The leather was abraded along the outer edge, as if he'd dragged it against concrete. Quyen pressed, gently, at the insole. It didn't budge. She took a pair of tweezers from the tray and slid them into a seam at the heel, finding that fine, human-designed looseness that hopes will go unnoticed. The insole lifted with a sticky sigh. Beneath, tucked against the shank, lay a rectangular wafer no bigger than a postage stamp, wrapped in translucent film. "Ezra," she said. He came off the wall with the slow acceleration of a heavy object becoming purposeful. "What is it?" She lifted it between tweezers. Not an RFID, not a SIM, paper, not plastic. The film came away, and she unfolded a single strip of cellulose with an ink line running its length. It felt like a page torn from a mechanical heart. Park, returning, saw their faces. "What did you find?" Quyen laid the strip against the light. The ink line wasn't just a line. It changed, thickened and thinned in a pattern that made the back of her mind itch. Next to the line, in neat printer font, a sequence of numbers repeated every 3 centimeters. 17.3 kilohertzes, 17.3 kilohertzes, 17.3 kilohertzes. "A poor man's spectrogram," Ezra breathed, "or a rich man's sad joke." "It's a calibration strip," Park said, intrigued. "Used in audio engineering to check response curves. Old school folks hang on to paper because it's less likely to betray you to the internet." 17.3, Quyen said aloud, as if the number might confess. She waited for the silent click in her head when a fact finds its place. Ultrasonic to some ears, audible to kids and cursed adults. "You can hear that?" Ezra asked. "On a good day," Quyen said. "On a bad day, it makes me want to peel my skin." He tuned his weapon to a mosquito young enough to need a tutor. Park nodded toward the body beyond the glass. He also tuned it to desperation. If our man couldn't get the mask off, the tone would do the job. The threshold between panic and paralysis is thinner than people think. He may have known he was dying. That's the cruelty of this thing. Knowledge rides along like a passenger who never tells you where to turn. "Speaking of knowledge," Ezra said, turning the cufflinks over in his palm, "we should name our guest." Park pulled the sheet back. The man's face, freed from the leering plastic, looked like a map reinventing itself under rain. His features were expensive and fragile in the way of people who never had to survive wind. Park guided his jaw open with the tenderness of a teacher showing an experiment. No foam, no burns, no charcoal stain. She moved to the torso, to the small wound over left heart, which up close had a wreathing pattern like a sun with tired rays. "This tattooing impressed me," Park said. "Not soot, not a stipple from powder. These are micro-pockmarks from heated particles. The pattern suggests a directed stream of hot particulates rather than a ballistic projectile. Imagine a microburst of ignited metal dust shaped by a nozzle and propelled under pressure." She glanced up at Ezra's raised brows. "Not a gun in the Colt sense, a gun in the nail salon sense." "A nail? Aerosols are everywhere," Park said. "We weaponize beauty daily. If you were designing a thing to look like a gunshot without the casing, without the muzzle flash on camera, you'd invent this. You'd place the emitter hidden in the environment or in clothing. You'd trigger it by sound. Then you'd sit back and let people argue about calibers. The mask delivered the inhaled agent," Quyen said, "and the wound is from a secondary device to stage a conventional murder. 2 tricks, 1 show." "2 tricks because the audience thinks it knows the rules," Park said. "He knows the audience thinks it knows the rules." Ezra turned to Quyen. "Tell me he doesn't have our number." "He called it," Quyen said. "We haven't picked up." Park pointed at the watch. "Stopped at 1:48, 14 seconds. He died earlier than that electromechanical failure trail's last breath. I'll have talk screens on the liquid line by midday, but if I had to hum a tune now, I'd hum organophosphate adjacent. Not exactly VX, not exactly a cousin. Something boutique. The peppermint's a nose-lie. The real smell hides under the sugar." "Organophosphates," Ezra said. "As in pesticides, as in Saren's family tree. That's not boutique. It is if you wrap it in supper club theatrics and whisper it into a mask," Park said. "Boutique is just a store with a smaller door." Quyen took that in with a half nod. She set the strip down and picked up one of the cufflinks, the interlaced A and C catching highly on the lab's fluorescence like a lesson in engraving. "Any matches for these initials?" His wallet was blank. His phone was replaced by a sneer, Park said. "But the fingers," she curled them up. "The pattern of callus is a study, not a laborer, not a typist who hates his desk. He wears his ring only at parties, or never not a groove where gold lived. And the dental work says he's either wealthy or the fellowship prize of a very good dental school." Ezra had his phone out with the half-guilty reflex of a man opening the refrigerator after midnight. "I can think of 3 harborettes with those initials in money: Archer Coe, the shipping whisperer, Ashton Klein, the casino half-king, and Alastair Crane, Mr. North Beacon. Remember his ad? Invest in your harbor. It had a tugboat and all white teeth. Crane, Park echoed. If so, Mr. Crane had a vessel hull built from something flimsier than the ad suggested. Quyen filed the names without speaking them aloud, superstition nipping at her ankles. Park replaced the sheet with the quiet ceremonial of someone who has had to reinvent dignity repeatedly on behalf of strangers. We'll call you with confession and conjecture as soon as they're ready, Park said. Meanwhile, take the mask to audio. Audio? Ezra said. As in the part of the lab we keep underfunded because the city believes sound is polite, Park said dryly. You'll want Sarah March. She hears colors and calibrates microphones for jazz records when she's bored of boredom. Quyen felt the little pry open inside her, then the creak of a stuck window admitting wind. The cello of hope sounded a low, one-note thing across the back of her throat. She thanked Park and left with Ezra, the mask's tray boxed like a pastry. Down 2 floors, across a hall featuring a mural of waves left half-finished by a grant that expired mid-brushstroke, they found audio. A long room with foam pyramids for walls and instruments polished with love. The woman at the mixing desk had a fall of brown hair that made a curtain of her, and when she turned, her irises were the green of a traffic light you don't trust yet. Sarah March, she said, by way of hello. If you brought me a problem and the problem sings, we're already friends. Sarah, Quyen said. I heard you can hear. March smiled with one full corner of her mouth. I can. Show me. They presented the mask and the paper strip. March handled both like relics and positioned a microphone inside the mask, then connected it to a rack-mounted throat of equipment that blossomed with LED veins. I'm going to bathe it in sweeps, she said. If it has a preferred note, it'll hum back. She set the dial, closed her eyes, and let the machine rise from infrasound to insect. At 16 kilohertzes, Ezra winced. At 17, Quyen got that prickled weep in her sinuses that told her somebody somewhere was boiling a kettle she couldn't see. At 17.3, the mask made the smallest tremor, a sympathetic rattle like a moth clinging to a lampshade in a room where the air condition has just switched on. March opened her eyes. There, she said. Hold. She increased the amplitude. The tremor grew. A tiny click-pop issued from somewhere in the inner lip as the micro-capsules gave up one by brittle one. March cut the sweep and leaned forward to smell. She jerked her head back a millimeter. Peppermint, she said, and then, thoughtful, and the ghost of nail polish remover's godmother. Acetone adjacent, Quyen murmured. Solvent carrier. So our tone isn't the only trigger, March said. Heat from breath, elastic tension, but the tone, she's the key that fits the lock every time. Can you jam it? Ezra asked. Oppose it? Cancel it? Build us a pocket that breaks the note before it finds the lock. March tapped her fingers on the desk in a rhythm only she and future percussionists would understand. Destructive interference in open air is a messy lover. She gives you what you want and then ghosts you. But micro-worlds are easier. If the lock lives on a specific resonant frequency, we can pitch our voice in the room to make the door think it's hearing itself. We can break plates with opera. We can hold this note shut. So, yes, Quyen said. So, maybe, with constraints, March corrected, I'd build a small device, a pocket mosquito that shouts a phase-inverted 17.3 into the mask's meat. It wouldn't save all masks, but it would choke this one in its crib. She looked at Quyen, curiosity soft and bright between her brows. What are you building, detective? A scene that refuses to behave, Quyen said. We have a producer who's scheduling our days. I'm thinking we produce back, March grinned. Yes, do that. Let me score it. They left with a promise. March would craft a puck the size of a watch face by noon, a thing they could tuck into their pockets and turn on like defiance. Ezra held the box like he had an infant in it and carried it all the way to the elevator before he said, You gonna tell me now why we also need a mask? And Ez have a, because body doubles are deceit in the shape of a human, Quyen said. Because magicians love mirrors. He wants us in his frame. We step in, but we bring our own light. We wear a mask he thinks is his, and we make him watch someone he thinks is himself. Ezra squinted. You're going to bait him. Not alone, Quyen said. On camera, but not alone. They found a conference room with a glass wall and a city stuck to it. Harbor's skyline metal as parentheses, the harbor itself gathered like a skirt around the piers. The lieutenant was waiting with a stack of printouts, a dossier of Alastair Crane's public life. North Beacon Capital, he said, tapping the top page. Executive chair, not CEO, he prefers strings to seats. Endowed a wing at the museum, divorced twice, playoff-level donor to 3 mayors, rumors about a pension fund he squeezed in 2018 didn't stick because the right glue wasn't in the room. Associates with most people anyone would call associates. Enemies? Ezra asked. The old-fashioned kind, yes. Labor groups who believe he turned retirement into roulette. The new-fashioned kind, too. Influencers he sued for suggesting he was a vampire. What about the others in the producer's tease? Quyen asked. The politician, the pastor, the artist, the cop, the fixer. Placeholders, the lieutenant said. Prototypes, or our future dead. I've got people drawing up lists for each category, and it looks like a census. Quyen read Crane's travel calendar. It showed dinners with ministers of obscure departments, charity auctions with alcohol percentages hidden under smiley placards, late nights at a speakeasy on Barrow Street called the Orpheum, where the hostesses wore shoulderless black and the barman shook ice like prayer bells. Orpheum, she said. Pull CCTV. Already did. Slices of night. The usual someone just off frame. Someone curious just before something important happens. At 12:55 a.m., a hostess brings a velvet pouch to Crane's booth. He laughs. He tips her. He opens the pouch and takes out a mask, Ezra supplied. A mask, the lieutenant confirmed. But the video stutters right there. 10 full seconds gone. Our tech says it looks like a jam, not a glitch. Infrared flood, Quyen said. Cheap devices use it to blind night vision. Smarter devices use patterns to force compression artifacts. She tapped the paper strip in her mind. Our producer likes old tricks, but he plays them with expensive hands. Find the hostess, the lieutenant said. Name's Petal, or at least the name tag says so. Our payroll pull shows no Petal. Either she uses the club's stage name policy to ghost, or she was a guest with a borrowed tray. Our friends at Orpheum are suddenly shy about compliance. Quyen stood, the room's glass making her reflection a ghost with edges. Get a warrant if they're slow. In the meantime, reach out to Felix. Get him somewhere safe. If the producer pinned him, then the producer knows his delivery route. He'll be cocky enough to show us he can hurt whoever the camera lingers on. Ezra nodded. I'll have uniform take him to a church. No churches, Quyen said, too quickly. Ezra tilted his head. Quyen softened the refusal. The producer named the pastor in his list. He might make a point of sanctifying his show. We don't give him pews. Then the Rust Motel on 5th. They once put a cop in there for 2 weeks and he came out believing in radio angels, Ezra said. No one watches Rust unless they want a myth. Quyen texted Sarah March. Think we can get a portable generator also? Need autonomy. March sent back a thumbs-up emoji that somehow felt subversive. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Good morning, Quyen. Did you like your inheritance? She looked at Ezra. He's texting me again. Replies? He asked. She typed, the strip under the heel? Quaint. Do you always leave party favors, or was I special? Bubble, pause. Unknown number. Only to those who listen. She didn't like how that made the air around her feel like syllables. Detective Tran. You said, let's make a deal. Say the terms. Unknown. I give you a target. You tell me how he died exactly and through whom the instrument came to him. If you are right before Thursday 8 p.m., the next light stays green. If you are wrong, it changes. If you accuse anyone on camera without proof, I release their confession. Detective Tran. You have confessions? Unknown. I have what audiences accept as confession, don't we all? Ezra read over her shoulder and let out that tugboat exhale that meant his patience had stiffened into weather. He's going to force you into making a show of process, he said. He wants to make discovery spectacle. Quyen slid her phone into her pocket like slipping a match back into its wet box. Then we make the spectacle a discovery. They rolled out with a plan that felt like an eggshell you could walk across if you remembered not to look down. Ezra to scoop up Felix and install him in myth. CSU to Orpheum with warrants and charm. March to her workshop to build the mosquito park to her tray of certainties. Quyen took herself to the thin seam between public and private where a journalist learns to borrow light. She called a number she hadn't used in 2 years. Hannah, she said, when the line lifted with the quick inhale of a woman always braced for a scoop, I need a favor involving cameras, ethics, and the willingness to be yelled at by your editor. You had me at cameras, said Hannah Lay, Harbor City Now's anchor whose eyebrows could move the market. Are you bringing me a corpse? I'm bringing you a counter-programming opportunity, Quyen said. I want your studio for 1 hour. No script. I come on live. I talk to the city about what compels us to watch and what compels us to act. You let me put a phone number on your chyron that routes to a team that will vet tips. You let me talk to a murderer without letting him own the room. Hannah was quiet for 3 beats, a sip of coffee, a slide of a chair, a mental calculation of oaths and ad revenues. Done, she said. 6 p.m. Tonight, we'll call it Red Talk. I'll make the chyron a porch light. Make it a traffic light, Quyen said. Red, yellow, green. Teach people how to name their instincts. I'll call graphics, Hannah said, wicked delight in her voice. And Quyen, make sure my lawyer doesn't have to spend the night. No promises, Quyen said, and hung up. On her way out of the lab, she cut through a hallway and almost collided with a woman carrying a plastic garment bag. The woman stopped, caught her balance with the easy poise of someone used to both heels and silence. Her name tag read ORPAOM, which meant the world sometimes liked to present you your chapters out of order. Petal? Quyen asked. The woman smiled with half her mouth. Different flower, she said. I'm Dahlia. But if you're looking for Petal, she's a ghost. We all are, at the club. You're leaving work with A dress? Quyen gestured to the bag. A costume, Dahlia said. You cops knocked on our door, and the bartender said the air looked like a warrant, so the girls scattered. I grabbed the wrong hanger. I figured I'd trade it back to Petal for a story. Do you have hers often? Quyen asked. Trade goods. Dahlia considered, then decided Quyen was a person who understood commerce. Petal was new. That's trade. She didn't live in the locker room yet. Came in 3 nights ago with perfect lipstick and the aura of a woman who has rehearsed being looked at but hasn't learned to be seen. I watched her for 13 minutes and said to myself, audition. Who hired her? Quyen asked. Management, Dahlia said, meaning a shadow. But she floated. She didn't know how to be bored yet. Did Petal bring a pouch to a booth last night? Quyen asked. Dahlia's eyes flicked to the garment bag and back to Quyen's face. If she did, she said, she did it while being filmed. Of course, Quyen said. Not our security, Dahlia added. Hers. She had this habit of adjusting her hair while looking toward the stairwell camera that isn't there. She wanted to make sure the pretend camera caught her best side. That's not deer in headlight energy. That's doe in movie energy. Dahlia held out the garment bag. Here, Petal's dress. She will want it back because it has a pocket stitched into the lining with room for exactly 1 velvet pouch. Quyen took it like it was a relic. Thank you. Bring me back a city where we get to be bored again, Dahlia said, and went toward a doorway where laughter sounded from the nearest safe distance. Quyen opened the garment bag in the back seat of the unmarked while the driver idled. Inside, a black dress cut to flatter 3 eras at once. In the lining, a pocket as promised, stitched with the loving arrogance of someone who wanted the pocket to seem like an accident. A single hair clung to the seam, coppery under the car's half-light. Quyen slid it into an evidence bag and then worked the pocket seam gently with her nail until something caught. A kiss of adhesive, the ghost of tape, a memory of a pouch, now elsewhere. Her phone pulsed again. March, who had the social skills of a pleasant ocean, had sent a recording, a clean 17, 3 kilohertz's tone and its phase-inverted twin, labeled tongue and gag in her file name. Quyen listened to 2 seconds of each and then put the phone down fast because it made her spine want to climb out of her body. She called Ezra. Status? Felix is installed in the rust with a stack of pancakes and the TV tuned to weather, he said. If the producer wants to turn that into content, he's going to have to sell a boring episode. Also, CSU pulled 3 angles from Orpheum. Your hostess chorus is practicing for the Phantom of Discovery, but they'll sing if we give them the right key. I have a key, Quyen said. Dahlia gave me a dress and a pocket. Meet me at the studio at 5. Bring Park's preliminary tox if she has it. Bring the mask and March's baby if it sleeps. We're throwing a porch light. The producer wants a deal. He can negotiate with a city. Q, Ezra said, voice going softer. You know your face is a face he's trying to paint. I'll bring a knife, she said, and hung up before he could ask whether she meant literal or metaphor. At 5:57 p.m., the studio lights carved a river of heat through the makeup, so an intern blotted her with a reverence that might have once been reserved for saints. Hannah Lay came over with a smile that tasted like espresso and war. Your phone lines? Quyen asked. Routed to a task room with 100 ears and the patience of angels, Hannah said. Comments disabled on the stream. We'll pin the number and make the chyron a traffic signal. Green is, I saw something I can prove. Yellow is, I have a hunch and a breadcrumb. Red is, I want attention. We'll put red on hold. Quyen smiled despite herself. You make it sound manageable. It's a sentence with a period, Hannah said. A rare thing in our city. Is your mosquito ready? Sarah March, in black jeans and a sweater she'd managed to make, looked like she'd poured it over her shoulders, handed Quyen a small puck in a velvet-lined box. Press once for phase inverted counter. Press twice for straight tone, she said. If we test it in your pocket during the show, and any hidden micro-capsules in the room hum, don't inhale. Casual guidance, Hannah said. My lawyer's eye is twitching. The countdown began. 6, 5, 4. Someone waved behind a camera like they were delivering a baby. Hannah touched Quyen's hand in solidarity, or for warmth. The light went red. Good evening, Hannah said to the city. Harbor City now has a guest who believes you are more interesting than your curiosity. Detective Quyen Tran. Be sieve se sam and of motion does sacy. Quyen looked at the lens, and the stupid, useful part of her brain that still loved journalism adjusted her expression by 1/2 degree until she looked precisely like a person you could tell the truth to. I know you've seen it, she said. I'm not here to pretend you haven't. A man died last night on camera. He wore a mask that was not a mask. He listened to a note that was not music. There is someone calling himself a producer who wants you to be his audience. I want you to be my collaborators. She told them as much as she could without handing the producer a script. She told them about a hostess in a dress with a pocket, about a tone that might be hiding in their doorbells and Christmas lights. She told them to bring facts and leave the crime fiction at home. And then she said a thing she had practiced in the elevator and hated herself for needing to practice. Every city needs a hero. He said that. I don't. I think cities need people who stand on their porch and choose again and again not to be entertained by cruelty. That's not heroism. That's adulthood. Let's be adults together. The phone lines lit like a skyline. Green, yellow, red. In the task room, voices triaged and typed, and Quyen watched the monitor fill with the addresses of the city's conscience. A yellow call turned green when the caller's tone steadied and the story gained a last name. A red became yellow when the caller used the phrase, I could be wrong. Midway through, Quyen felt the puck buzz in her pocket, a hum that wasn't mechanical. She pressed it once counter. The buzzing went flat, then died. She glanced at March, who lifted her brows. Someone had tried to sing a note into the studio. The studio phones glowed again, and Ezra rushed in from the side, face set in a way that meant a thing had happened he had waited for and dreaded. Coo, he said, low, for her ear. Park's tox came back. It's organophosphatish, the boutique darling you predicted. And he swallowed the other half. And the producer just posted the next thumbnail. Green light, a church steeple. On a monitor off to the side, Hannah's producer flashed the image, a sleek composition of a traffic signal with the green lit, a silhouette of a steeple rising out of its glass, the cross a needle against the sky. Quyen turned back to the lens and smiled like a person who knows where the story is, even when the story knows where she is. Thank you, she said to the city. A period and a promise. I'll see you after the break. Chapter 3. The Steeple's Green Eye. The studio break room smelled like burnt coffee and neon makeup. Quyen stood with her palm on the velvet box, feeling the small, petulant weight of Sarah's puck humming like a heart pressed between felt. Hannah's producer cut the feed to commercial with a flourish, as if he were executing a dove in a hat trick. The image on the auxiliary monitor hung in the air a second longer. The traffic signal warmed to green, the silhouette of a steeple stabbed through its bulb, and then blinked to ads for sleep aids and attorneys. "The green is a promise," Ezra said at her shoulder. "The steeple's a dare." Quyen didn't answer. Her eyes were busy with the steeple's lines, mapping absence. A spire, not a dome. A crossed finial with a slight bend to the right, like a finger crooked when you didn't mean to beckon. The clapboard impression in the shadow, the way the lower silhouette showed a bell louver with 3 slats instead of the usual 2. Sarah drifted closer, hair tucked behind one ear. Green eyes narrowed like a musician trying to hear a sour note in a room full of polite applause. "Architectural profile," Sarah murmured. "Old Harbor Parish. Not Catholic, not ornate. Protestant plainness, pretending to be humble and failing beautifully. I could take a guess if I had a skyline shot." Hannah, who had never met a map she didn't make personal, snapped her fingers. "Graphics," she called. "Throw me old city B-roll. Church is real." The interns became a river. On the nearest monitor, Harbor's past rose up. A sepia Christ Church on Anchor Lane, a white clapboard Trinity on Gibbs Hill, the narrow brownstone of Mercy House with a squat bell turret. The images crawled, and then there, Quyen felt the click of alignment, like a small pain at the back of her throat. "Pause," she said. The screen stilled on a shot of Street Isidore's at Pier Quarter, the steeple's finial slightly bent, the bell louver triple slat, the clapboards shadows like fish scales. Someone's shaky camera had caught it from the ferry, giving it an angle that matched the thumbnail's geometry to within a sketch line. "Street Izzy's," Ezra said. "The one with the soup line that wraps the block." "And the community legal clinic in the basement," Hannah added. "You know their pastor, May Calder? She's got a spine that could be used to measure piano wire." Quyen still didn't answer. Her gaze had slipped past the steeple to the caption on the B-roll, a throwaway credit that only a person who likes to see how the sausage of stories is made would read. "Shot by May Calder for Harbor Heritage. She recorded her own church for a documentary the city never funded." "You know her?" Ezra asked, catching the change in Quyen's face. "I know of her," Quyen said. "From before. Before the badge, in the years when she had a microphone and a discount Metro pass that could get her anywhere with a story, she'd sat in the Street Izzy's basement once, recording the sound of rice clacking into aluminum trays while May's voice moved through the room like bread broken, shared, simple. Quyen had liked her because May had spoken like truth wasn't a sword, but a rope you threw to people you wanted to see again. "Call her," Ezra said. Hannah already had her phone to her ear. "May, it's Hannah Lay. I'm with Detective Tran and Sergeant Pike. We need to, yes, now, and fine." They hit the street with the studio's heat still clinging to their clothes like static. Harbor had that after-broadcast brightness to it, over-caffeinated, under-rested. The unmarked slid through the city with lights low, crossing Bridge Street as the ferry horns traded moans with gulls. Street Izzy's rose out of the row houses like a sentence someone meant. Clapboard white, clapboard peeling, the kind of paint you only see on buildings that refuse to accept how many winters a city has. May Calder met them on the steps, coat open to show a black dress that had been passed down from another woman who had believed looking decent was a private covenant. She had hair the color of winter wheat pulled up in a knot that had surrendered to 3 strands, and eyes like the part of the sea that doesn't show off. She looked at Quyen like a person who already guessed what a camera would take from their day. "You've come to tell me the power company is about to fail on schedule," May said, dry, "or to ask me whether I intend to preach on a subject more exciting than mercy?" "Neither," Quyen said. "We've come to end a show." May's mouth softened at the edges. "So, you're the one who made the city listen without performing," she said to Quyen. "We were rooting for you downstairs. The soup line likes a woman who tells people to turn their porch lights on." "We need to see your AV closet," Sarah said, apologetic but focused. "Your microphones. Anything that sings." May's brows lifted. "Of course," she said, "if it spares me a meeting with the Diocesan Liturgy Committee about wireless interference, I will accept federal intrusion as a sacrament." Inside, the nave smelled like pine cleaner and hands. The pews sighed when you leaned on them. The ceiling rose in beams that someone had sanded long ago with love more than skill. You could see the places where they'd pressed too hard and learned gentleness by mistake. The steeple ladder began at a door beside the organ loft, a narrow rectangle that looked like a sudden thought. May led them to a small room behind the chancel where the church's modern insecurities had been stashed. A rack-mount amplifier with tape labeling that said, "Don't," a drawer of tangled lavaliers, a router blinking like a city in night miniature. Sarah moved through it like a woman smelling rain. She picked up a lavalier mic, a cheap one, then another, a better one, then a third whose clip bore a small nick that had polished bright from nervous fingers. "Whose is this?" Sarah asked. May hesitated. "Mine. I'm vain about being heard," she admitted. "I used to project." Then the room grew, and I grew tired. Sarah turned the mic in her fingers like a coin. She slipped the foam windscreen off with 2 nails and held it to the light. To the naked eye, it was a dust bunny masquerading as a piece of gear. To Sarah, whose ears had a corresponding way of looking, something in its granulation made her nostrils flare. "May I?" she asked. "Please," May said. Sarah placed the windscreen under a small desk scope the church used to inspect the leather cracks in old hymnals. Under magnification, the foam cells showed a faint sediment, like sugar that refuses to dissolve in cold tea. Sarah looked once at Quyen. Quyen touched the velvet box. "Let's not guess," Quyen said. Sarah set the foam on a tray, fitted a tiny mic over it, and dialed her phone to the file she'd labeled tongue. She let the 17.3 kilohertz's tone out at a whisper. The windscreen did a miniature shiver, then a tiny snow fell from its pores, white granules so fine you could almost mistake them for dust that had learned the grammar of murder. May saw it and only looked a little sick. She was a woman used to ferreting the bitter out of sweetness. "So that's how this works," she said quietly. "You sing a note, and the breath of a preacher becomes her poison." "Not just preachers," Sarah said. "Anyone who wears one of these, podcasters, teachers, politicians." It tracks with a thumbnail," Ezra said, throat tight. "Green light. A sermon is a green light for the heart. He makes it mean, go die." "Who gave you this windscreen?" Quyen asked. "When did yours get swapped?" I wouldn't know if it had," May admitted. "Our volunteer tech, Eli, preps my apron mic. He's the kind of boy who apologizes to furniture when he bumps into it. If he's in your story, he is the part that breaks gently." "How long has he volunteered?" Ezra asked. "A year," May said. "He came after his father after we lost his father. He sits in the back and makes the wireless connect like other people build birdhouses. He have a safe. Sarah was already moving through the drawer of windscreens, pinching one another, setting them in 2 stacks. Contaminated. Clean. Contaminated. Cleanish, she intoned. Whoever did this didn't dust the whole drawer. This is curated, not broadcast. Someone targeted yours, Quyen said to May. May looked at her hands. Ringless, clean, capable. I don't tweet, she said. I preach. I sign a few letters to the editor. I take casseroles to people who can't be public about needing them. Why me? Because you are television without asking to be, Quyen said. Because your room is full even when it's empty. Because your voice matters to people who don't click. Enna. May accepted that with the sad competence of a person who knows the price of being functional. Can I keep preaching? She asked. Not martyr bravado, just scheduling. We have night prayers. People came early when they saw the thumbnail. They're worried. Quyen glanced at Ezra. We can't cancel, she said. If we cancel, he learns. He switches targets, finds another Steeple, makes it a proof that fear has a faster car. Ezra palmed his badge like a worry stone. So we control it, he said. We make the room unmusical. Sarah pressed the puck into Quyen's hand, then pulled a larger device from her messenger bag, a squat cylinder with a handle, its mouth a nest of concentric rings. Portable phase cannon, she said matter-of-factly, as if she were naming a casserole. It will shout inverted 17.3 into the air for a radius of 20 feet. It might make you feel queasy. If you were a dog, you would sue me. We mount it in the pulpit, Quyen said, and switch it on when May speaks. And the steeple, Sarah added. I want the ladder. If he means to sing from above, I want to see the choir. They climbed. The steeple smelled like pigeon in winter. The ladder disagreed but held. Ezra went first because he was the kind of man who understood both gravity and the truce you make with it. Quyen followed with the cylinder on a strap she could spit back out if she had to. Sarah came last. Pockets full of tones. Halfway up, they hit the bell level. Harbor's cast iron pride hung there, melancholy, in the way of heavy objects out of work. Beyond it, a tight hatch led to the louver. Sarah stuck her head into the crawl and swore softly. Found your singer, she said. In the crook where the louver met the post, nestled like a bat in a barn. Someone had mounted a transducer array. 4 tweeters glued into a flower, wires running along the post slicked with paint to match. A small lithium battery pack, the kind you buy for drones, blinked like an eye too tired to pretend it was just a battery. A radio receiver sat in a plastic housing the size of a paperback, its LED pulsed green. Green light, Ezra said. Sarah didn't touch it. She turned her phone to camera and shot it like evidence before it had a chance to become story. It's set to a carrier band any idiot with a walkie can reach, she said, but the note trigger is encoded. He sends a packet. It sings. Foam sneezes. Old trick, expensive hands. Or new trick, cheap mind that learns. Quyen felt the small movement in her pocket that meant her phone had a thought of its own. She pulled it out and saw the unknown number, the ellipsis pulsing. She didn't open the text. She let the bubble sit there like a finger tapping on a window while you decide whether to pretend the room's empty. Can you mute it? Ezra asked Sarah. With prejudice, Sarah said. She produced from her bag a black condom of mesh and slipped it over the array like a hood over a falcon's head. That's a Faraday sock. It won't kill the battery, but it will ask it to shut up without making a scene. She secured it with a zip tie conjured from the bottomless pocket witches and sound engineers share. Back down, Quyen said. We have a mic to swap and a room to tune. At the chancel, May watched them return with a steady face. She had changed into a stole the color of spring, because you do not make fear the palette of your work. She let Sarah tape the phase cannon under the pulpit shelf so its inverse hum would kiss her chin when she spoke. She let Quyen switch her foam windscreen for one that Sarah had washed in vinegar and a curse. Eli? Quyen asked, looking around. May nodded toward the back, where a boy of 19 in a hoodie stood with a coil of XLR like a child hugging a snake. He had the kind of face that always looks like it just woke up and is sorry for it. His hair was soft, his hands clean. When Quyen approached, he tried to stand behind the mixing board as if it were a mother. Eli, Quyen said, and gave him a smile some people had told her softened her. Detective Tran, we need your help. Haste, and have Leif, he swallowed, throat bobbing. I don't if I messed up, I think you did what you always do, Quyen said. You made it easier for the room to hear a good thing. Did anyone give you May's windscreen this week? Anyone not from church? Eli's eyes darted right, left, then stilled like a deer. He bit his lip. There's a woman, he said. She came Tuesday. Said she was a city safety inspector for electronics because a church on the south side got cited. She had a lanyard and a badge and a clipboard, and she showed me a list with our church name on it. She said our windscreens might be off-gassing something, and she gave me new ones in a pouch and took 3. He looked at May, almost crying. I didn't think. She had a clipboard. What did she look like? Ezra asked gently. Pretty, Eli said abashed. Red hair, like copper. She took off her glasses when she talked to me and then put them back on, and I thought that meant she was, a professional. Petal, Quyen said softly. Dahlia's copper hair, the pocket in the dress, the adhesive ghost in the lining. Do you have the pouch? Ezra asked. I gave it to her, Eli said. She said she'd recycle. Sarah sighed through her nose a single note that could have been a scale or a swear. Quyen touched Eli's sleeve once, a absolution not legally binding but essential. You're here now, she said. That's useful. You're going to be my eyes on the crowd. If you see her, if you see copper, don't approach, don't alert. Just text me a dot. Eli nodded, breath hitching. A dot? He said. I can do dots. People began to arrive the way they do for funerals and births. On time, in, out of order. The room filled with the life of harbor. Men with hands raw from dishwater, women whose coats had belonged to a sister and then a cousin, kids with noses glossy from autumn. They took bulletins from a basket and folded them in half the way people fold programs when they want to pretend they know where to put their hands. A man in a suit sat by himself and took a small bottle of water out of his inside pocket with the seriousness of someone who had decided to make better decisions. A woman wore a shirt that said, "No gods, no masters," and sat next to a woman with a rosary in her hand, and they shared a packet of mints without interrogating theology. Quyen stood in the back by the columbarium door, between shadow and light, where a detective belongs when the room is full of people who aren't performing. Ezra took the side aisle a third of the way up. Sarah lay, invisible sound over the room like a mother tucking a blanket to a chin. May stepped into the pulpit, as if stepping onto a ferry, one foot, then the other. The slight sway of someone who knows the water underneath looks solid until it isn't. She put one hand on the rim, like she was touching the railing at the park and looked like nothing but herself. "Good evening," she said. The cannon hummed a countersong, a null that the human ear did not parse as music, only as an absence where a mosquito would not be. "We have a crowd tonight. I know why. I'm not going to say the word. It has enough of us already. I'm going to say a different one. Neighbor." Her voice folded around the room like a shawl. Quyen scanned faces and saw, 3 rows from the back, a flash of copper hair and black glasses. The woman wore a blue coat with a police charity patch on one arm, a tasteful, wordless endorsement of public virtue. She was watching May with the attention of an actor at a table read, measuring the lines she would deliver if given the chance. Quyen's phone buzzed in her pocket. A dot. Eli had seen her too. The text bubble from unknown pushed up at the same time, petty and patient. She slid her eyes to it without letting her attention change her face. "Unknown. You're resourceful. Detective Tran. You're predictable. Unknown. And you are framed." It could have been an insult. To Quyen, it was simply a diagnosis. She watched Copper stand, as casually as a person whose knees had secrets, and moved to the side aisle, taking an angle that put her near the sacristy door that led to the AV closet. Her hand dipped to her coat pocket. She palmed something small and square. Quyen recognized the size, velvet pouch dimensions, but flatter. A signal transmitter? A tone remote? A phone case with a mouth that sang what phones are shamed into not doing in polite company. Sarah's hand lifted, a tiny flick of fingers. Quyen pressed the puck once counter. A hum went through the room like a thought. Copper winced, just at the jaw, the way a person winces when a dentist hits that nerve because you flinched before he did. May kept speaking, "Neighbor, neighbor, neighbor." The word became a rope. One corner of Copper's mouth lifted in what, on a theater stage, would be called acknowledgement of the other actor's choices. 2 things happened at once. First, the green light in the steeple, the battery's sleepy LED, tried to go bright and failed under Sarah's sock. The radio in Copper's pocket chirped a little, confused, like a bird that had flown into a glass door it didn't know was there. Second, a different note whispered through the room, "Not 17, 3. A lower thing, the kind of frequency you feel in ribs, not ears. Sarah's head snapped, and she swore under her breath. 3 clean syllables. "He's layered it," she hissed. 2-stage. The counter's making the lock stronger. He wants us to overcorrect. Quyen's tongue went dry. She signaled Ezra with 2 fingers flank, hold, and stepped into the aisle. Copper saw her and smiled that small stagecraft smile again. She didn't run. Running is for prey. She walked forward like they were about to exchange a script signed by the author. "Petal," Quyen said when they were within voice that wouldn't make a scene. "Or would you like the name your mother says when she's worried?" His intent. "I like Petal," the woman said. Up close, her copper wasn't vanity. It was strategy, expensive dye, and a color that only looks cheap if you're unkind. Her blue charity sleeve patch had been stitched on with thread that didn't match, a detail to make the costume seem honest. Her hands were bare, no ring, no callus where a ring would go. Her nails short, cut square like someone who cooks. "You're going to tell me your last name," Quyen said, "before I come to it the way I always do, in a list of aliases that make a judge tired." "I'm going to tell you," Petal said, "that the thing in my pocket is older than your counter. Would you like to hear it?" In oh no tense. "Do I look like a person who likes to hear things out of turn?" Quyen said. Petal's eyes warmed, amused. "You do," she said. You look like a person who stays for the credits to see who tuned the piano." Across the nave, Ezra shifted, and a man in the third pew picked that moment to stand, sway, and fall. His head struck the pew edge with a crack that climbed the columns like a rude joke. People gasped, turned, began to stand. The steeple groaned the old wood, letting the weather in, then stilled. Quyen took one step toward the fallen man, and Petal's hand came out of her pocket, holding not a transmitter, not a phone, but a thing that looked like a key fob with a hole. She flicked her thumb and the hole revealed a mesh. Sarah made a sound that wasn't a word. "Ultrasound whistle," Sarah breathed. "Dog trainer's pervert cousin." The mesh mouth came up to Petal's lips. Quyen moved without thinking. She hit the puck twice straight tone, throwing 17.3 into the room like glass. People flinched. A baby cried once, then decided being angry was too much work. Petal laughed into the mesh. A single breath. The whistle didn't squeal, it bit. Quyen felt the lock in the room, reach for a key, and find 3. Everything could have gone wrong then. Everything should have gone wrong, because that is how wrong things work. They like to breed. But the phase cannon under the pulpit did its job like a middle school math teacher grading a test stern and utterly impartial. The note that would have shaken open the micro-capsule doors met its negative in the pocket of air around May's mouth and died with no grandchildren. May, who had paused only enough to be human, said, "And the thing about neighbors is," and continued with the story of a man who carried his friend's groceries when his friend forgot how to carry anything. Ezra vaulted the pew like an old athlete pulling a memory out of his knee and went to the fallen man, whose head had a dramatic cut and whose breathing, fast and feathery, sounded like Panic's cousin. "Not an exposure," Ezra called, dry and glad. "Just gravity with bad timing." "Story of church," May said into the mic, keeping a room from becoming all anxiety by feeding it an extra slice of calm. Laughter flickered, then settled like a bird that realizes the branch will hold. Petal's eyes narrowed. The mesh went back into her pocket in one smooth "the show is over" motion. "That was discourteous," she murmured to Quyen. "He will not be impressed." Quyen kept her face still. "He'll be alive to be unimpressed. That's what I measure." "You measure? How quaint." Petal glanced up at the steeple as if she could see through wood and sock and discipline. "You'll enjoy Act 2. And we're in Act 2, Quyen said. "I'm bored of 3-act structures." Petal smiled in a way that made the people sitting near them assume 2 women had just agreed to disagree about the casserole board. "You know he isn't a single person," she said conversationally. "Producer, that's a role, not a man." "Like Petal," Quyen said. "Exactly," Petal said, almost pleased. She touched Quyen's sleeve lightly, too lightly, and moved past her toward the side door. Quyen let her go to the threshold and then called, without turning her head, "Badge." Ezra was there already, bulk in the door, a polite wall. Petal looked at him, then at the door, then at Quyen. She sighed like a woman delayed by matters beneath her. "We're going to chat?" she asked. "We're going to chat," Quyen said. In the sacristy, the smell of wine and lemon oil made the scene feel like a domesticated crime. Sarah closed the door and leaned her back against it like a weight would help. May continued talking to her room through a mic that now sang obedience. "Do you want my real name?" Petal asked, almost princely. "It's Kiera Vance. It used to be Kiera Vukovic. My mother thought the V was romantic. She wasn't wrong. It looks good on merch. You work for Orpheum," Quyen said, "and for whoever uses Orpheum like a casting call." "Of course," Kiera said. What is a city but a crew? You need extras to keep the foreground interesting. You came Tuesday with a clipboard, Ezra said. Eli gave you windscreens and you gave him the instrument. I gave him safety, Kiera corrected. I took away danger. She looked at Sarah. You wrecked my chain. I admire that. Rare to see a lab come to church and understand the hymn. You tried to sing a second note, Sarah said. Lower, a counter. What's the payload for that one? Not micro-capsules. Something piezo? Heat break? You think I'll tell you how the sausage is made, Kiera said, amused. Detective Tran, your face asks for confession, but you are not a priest. No, Quyen said. I am the woman who will show your face to the city the way you did to mine. At that, Kiera's amusement tilted. Not fear, displeasure, maybe. Annoyance at being anticipated. You assume I want to be invisible, she said. But actors die in the dark, producers don't. Your unknown sends me love notes, Quyen said. He thinks he's the only voice. You're showing me harmony. I appreciate harmony. It's easier to isolate than melody. Kiera's gaze sharpened. Men forget that, she said. They mistake chorus for adoration. May's voice rose in the sanctuary, telling a story about a girl who braided rope out of plastic bags to help her aunt pull a cart. Quyen let that voice be the clock. You delivered a pouch to Alistair Crane, Quyen said, at Orpheum. He took out a mask. The video glitched because your clipper blinded the infrared. Alistair, Kiera repeated. I didn't say his name. You didn't have to, Quyen said. His initials are a hobby of this show. Kiera's copper hair caught the sacristy bulb and lit like something animate. You think themes mean conspiracy, she said. Sometimes themes are just graphic design. Ezra watched her hands because he is a man who has had to testify about hands. They were calm. Quyen's phone buzzed again. Unknown, you are behind my schedule. I promised Thursday. It is now Wednesday, and you have stolen my rehearsal. Detective Tran, learn to improvise. Unknown, your partner is about to disappoint you. She didn't let the words change anything in her face. She looked at Ezra, who cocked an eyebrow. You good? She gave him a half blink. Fine. Sarah's head tilted. Do you hear that? She asked. At first, Quyen didn't. Then the air in the sacristy softened, as if someone had put a felt hat on the room. The ambient hum of the building went under a blanket. From somewhere beneath, in the basement where Street Izzy's kept its legal clinic and its groceries and its old casseroles, a faint buzz began, angry and irregular. Generator, Sarah said. Someone just... The lights dimmed. The sanctuary gasped once, then hushed as May, consummate neighbor, said, We've got this. Quyen touched the steeple ladder in her head, and then the basement stairs. Green light, he had said. The image had promised up, but bombs do their own theology. They go down. Ezra, she said. On it, he said. He tapped his radio. Uniform to Street Izzy's. Now, clear the basement. Kiera smiled like a woman enjoying dessert. You stepped into the intersection, she said to Quyen. You forgot to check below. Quyen moved to the door. Sarah caught her arm. Take the cannon, she said, urgent. If he wired a tone trigger to a release, we're chasing pressure and sound in a building with old pipes, Ezra said. We may be in for a harmonic. May's voice in the sanctuary didn't climb. It deepened. Neighbors, she said, sometimes we think help is up. Sometimes it is down. The people who go down are the ones who know the way back. Quyen shouldn't have been comforted by a pastor she barely knew. She was. She took the cylinder, the velvet puck, the habit of moving toward where things go wrong. The stairs to the basement were concrete, the paint peeled in the shape of continents. The buzz grew as they descended. The legal clinic's door stood ajar, a fluorescent light stuttering inside. The soup pantry smelled like warm onion, even with the refrigerators closed. The buzz crescendoed in the boiler room, where a portable generator had been rolled in and plugged into a surge strip whose cheap red light boasted life like a lyre. Sarah crouched and danced her hands above the machine like a dowser. "He's powering a transducer bank," she said. "Not for the room. For the vents. The ducks feed up under the pulpit," Ezra said. "He means to smoke the green light up into May's mouth if the windscreen failed." Quyen lifted the cylinder and switched it on. The inverted hum filled the basement like a rule. The generator churred, then settled into a sulk. The buzz it had been pushing lower pulsed, found an equal and opposite, and threw a tantrum. The surge strip's red light went dark, then bright, then dark. "Don't touch it," Sarah said when Ezra's hand moved toward the plug. "He'll have rigged a piezo detonator in the plug to mimic a harmless shock. Your muscle spasm will finish the circuit." "So we starve it," Ezra said. He followed the cord to the wall and yanked the main breaker down like pulling a bad tooth. The room exhaled. The generator whined as it ran out of conversation. Sarah put her ear to the vent, a thing that would make no sense to anyone who didn't know a musician. "He put a micro-stove in line," she said. "A heating element that would pop capsules if we'd had foam up top. Clever, cruel, his favorite couple." Footfalls pounded the stairs. Uniforms burst into the basement in the shape of an apology for being late. Quyen pointed at the generator and the vent. "Bag, tag, worship later," she said. Ezra's radio crackled with a voice they knew too well. "Lieutenant, Pike, Tran, stand down on the church. We've got a situation at Rust Motel. Your witness, the delivery boy Felix, just had a visit." Unknown's text sat on Quyen's screen like a stain. "Your partner is about to disappoint you." She looked at Ezra. He looked back with a face that knew he couldn't be in two places at once. "Go," she said. "Take a car. I'll keep May breathing and wrap Kiera. My disappointment will be fashionably late," Ezra said, and ran. Kiera leaned against the doorway with a patience that felt learned. "He's going to discover that you can't save everyone on the same episode," she said. "It's not a failure. It's pacing." Quyen drew herself up, which for her meant she shed the part of her that made jokes about knives. "You're under arrest," she said. For attempted, she stopped herself. "Charged too soon, and you give a defense attorney a paper flower to fold. For endangerment, conspiracy, tampering. More words to come later." Kiera didn't resist. She held out her wrists like a person about to make a new kind of jewelry. "Make sure you find your cop on your little list," she said as the cuffs clicked. "It's a good episode title. We'll get you numbers." "The cop?" Quyen said. "You'll find him," Kiera said. "He'll surprise you. They always do." Upstairs, May ended her prayer with "Amen" like a period and a hand extended. People turned to one another and said peace, because you say it whether you feel it or not, because practice helps. The soup line would be long tonight, because fear makes you hungry or makes you feed. Quyen walked Kiera through the aisle, past faces who had made a choice to be in a room that might hurt them, and decided church is a place you go precisely then. At the door, May met her with a look that held 10 different kinds of gratitude and 4 kinds of knowledge. "Will I still have to preach tomorrow?" May asked. Yes, Quyen said. That's how this works. We keep doing the things we do. He thinks green means go for him. It means go for us. Kiera smiled that small smile. See you Thursday, she said pleasantly. Quyen's phone buzzed. Another message from unknown. A photo this time, blurry, motel hallway carpet, in a pattern that looked like someone's idea of coral. A tray of pancakes upside down on the linoleum. A dot of blood like syrup. Underneath, just 3 words. Green means hunt. Chapter 4. Rust and Bone. Ezra drove like someone who'd learned patience the hard way and only spent it when math required. The Rust Motel rose out of the damp like a memory no one admitted to. 3 stories of flaking paint, doors the color of old pennies, a flickering vacancy sign that spelled VANCY, as if mercy had left a long time ago. The corridor carpets wore that coral pattern found only in places where stains are expected to make friends. He parked crooked across 2 spaces because rules were for days when no one promised to hunt. The night clerk, eyes bleached by late shifts and cable news, half stood at the counter and then sank again when he saw the badge. Room? Ezra said, already checking the stairwell camera that didn't exist. 206, the clerk said, rubbing his jaw as if it might produce courage. Kid checked in with a cop. Big guy, kind eyes. That was 20 minutes? He ordered Pancake's place across the street, runs all night for the regrettable. Anyone go in after? Ezra asked. Redhead, the clerk said. Copper like a penny you actually pick up. She asked for hot water and the Wi-Fi password. Said she was visiting her uncle. I gave her a kettle like a fool. He assessed. Ezra's stomach did one of those quiet flips it had learned in Kuwait and never unlearned. He went up the stairs 2 at a time, the VNCY sign reflecting off the window glass like a metronome of failure. The hallway smelled like motel. Microwaves, perfume, argument. The tray of pancakes lay upside down outside 206, syrup cometing the carpet. A dotted line of red crossed the coral like someone had played Connect the Dots with blood. Not a pool, a touch, a warning or a taunt. He rapped once. Felix, he called, voice pitched to tuck a tremor into authority. It's Pike. Silence. Then a scuff. Ezra pressed his ear to the door. The low groan of the aging HVAC unit undercut another sound, tight and insistent, a whine that barely existed in the room until his jaw started to ache. Damn it, he said. He slipped the master key the clerk had given him into the slot. The LED turned green with a cheerfulness he resented. The door swung. 206 wore its budget like a cardigan. Thin bedspread, heavy furniture meant to outlast regret, a picture of a boat that had never floated. Felix crouched between the beds with a towel over his mouth, eyes on fire and wet. A smoke detector blinked overhead, its red light winking like gossip. The bathroom door stood open, mirror filmed with steam. Across the sink, a travel kettle, lid sprung, a length of clear tubing snaking from its spout to the HVAC vent. Improvised anatomy. The kind of thing clever cruelty builds while you're fetching ice. Stay low, Ezra said. Don't talk. Felix nodded. Towel pressed to his face the way you press it to a wound when you don't care if you ruin it. Ezra reached into his jacket and flicked on Sarah's puck. He didn't have the cylinder, but the velvet disc sang its inverted hymn. The smoke detector's blink rate slowed, as if the room had remembered to breathe. The kettle chuffed once, and then settled into a sulky simmer. Ezra crossed to the bathroom. The mirror reflected a man older than he felt and kinder than he wanted to be. He yanked the plug. The kettle sulked, then died. He pulled the tubing with 2 fingers. The end was capped with a mesh that glistened faintly in the light. "Don't touch that," he told himself, because habit was a kind of prayer. "Sir," Felix mumbled into the towel, eyes huge. "She came with tea. Said the cop outside told her to." He stepped out to pee. He left his radio on the nightstand. It played a beep, like the tone when a weather alert comes on, but higher. Then he didn't come back. "Which cop?" Ezra asked, already preparing himself for the answer he didn't want. "I didn't ask his name," Felix said, shame crumpling his mouth. "He had a badge. He was nice. He told me to lock the door and not open it for anybody but him. He showed me his ring and said he has a 5-year-old who thinks pancakes are a food group." Ezra's throat tightened. He'd stolen that line once himself when he wanted a frightened person to hand him their fear for a minute. "Uniform?" he asked, even though he knew the answer. "Plain clothes," Felix said. "Big shoulders. Clothes looked like a normal person's. Shoes looked like a cop's." Ezra crouched, keeping his head below the line of the vent. "Okay. We're okay. We're leaving." Yes. He wrapped the kettle in a towel, pulled the plug from the wall with the protective stance of a man expecting teeth in the outlet, and bagged the mesh cap. He kept the puck humming in his pocket. He opened the window 2 inches to let the motel's idea of air in. Sirens approached, less a scream than a promise. Ezra helped Felix stand. The kid's legs shook like a beginner learning rain. The dot of blood on the carpet had made a friend. A second bead shone by the bathroom threshold. "Where's the other cop?" Felix whispered. "Good question," Ezra said. He didn't have an answer that wouldn't trip both of their alarms. He scanned the small room for cameras and found none obvious. Then he looked at the boat picture. Its frame sat at a tilt that didn't match the rest. He lifted it and found, taped to the back, a webcam, battery-operated, its light dead, its lens a single blind eye. He held it up. "Souvenir," he said, and bagged it. He got Felix into the corridor and into the arms of 2 uniforms who arrived half-running with a medic. The medic painted Felix's nostrils with a gel that smelled like peppermint in Spaceship. Felix made a face and decided he preferred breath to dignity. Ezra's phone buzzed. Unknown numbers had become their own weather. He didn't look. He kept his eyes on the balcony rail where the metal had bloomed with rust in shapes that looked like maps of countries no one would ever visit. "Sergeant Pike!" a voice called from the far end. Ezra turned. A man in a plain jacket and jeans that didn't sit right because they were bought by a wife with better taste lifted a hand. He had 5 o'clock shadow shaved an hour too early and the posture of someone whose shoulders had once learned to kick indoors. His badge came out easy, held low like a secret. Behind him, 2 uniforms hovered, unsure whether to make themselves proximate or scarce. "Detective Liam Hart," the man said. He had a voice that had told jokes in locker rooms until the person who laughed stopped being on the force. "We had a call." Ezra knew Hart. Not personally, but by breed. He was a detective from a precinct on the west side, the kind that makes a number and threatens it with a cigar. He didn't belong to Ezra's circle. Quyen would say, "Not your people, but your species." "We have it," Ezra said. "We've stabilized. The room's hot. Don't go in without counter." Hart raised his eyebrows. "Counter?" Ezra tapped the puck in his pocket. "Tone." Hart smiled, like a man delighted to learn a new word he would never use. "Ah, your show," he said, and looked at the camera baggie in Ezra's hand. His gaze lingered a second too long, as if memorizing brand and tape pattern. You always find the lens. Badge, Ezra said suddenly, because Kiera had said something about cops and surprises, and the worst way to be wrong was quiet. Hart held it out again. Ezra looked at the micro-scratches around the clip. He had a gut for fakes, and this wasn't one. Hart was what he said, but real didn't mean good. "We'll take your witness," Hart said. "I have a room at the precinct." "He's our witness," Ezra said. "You can share when the city isn't trying to make him popcorn." Hart considered that. He was polite enough not to step forward. Politeness, Ezra knew, often disguised a power calculation. "Sure," Hart said. "Just trying to help." "Help by checking the stairwell cameras that don't exist," Ezra said, "and the clerk's memory. And tell your men not to breathe until Sarah March gives us a lullaby." Hart's mouth twitched around the name. "Sarah," he said, like a man repeating a lyric from college. "You know she used to date a drummer I can't stand?" "Everyone has a past," Ezra said. "Don't make it our present." Hart laughed like a man who appreciated a good line, even when it pointed at him. He said nothing else. He turned his palms out like, "See, no knives," and let Ezra shepherd Felix down the stairs. On the sidewalk, the night had grown a skin. He put Felix into the back of the unmarked and slid in next to him instead of in front. "You good?" he asked. "Define good," Felix said damply. Then, braver, "I didn't open the door." "I saw," Ezra said. "I'm proud of you." He didn't say the thing he wanted to say. You didn't die because names were a kind of binding, and he didn't want to tie tonight to a gratitude he might later resent. He texted Quyen, "Felix safe. Kettle plus vent rig." Hart showed. Her answer came quick. "Kiara in cuffs. Church secure. Producer taunts. Watch Hart." Ezra looked in the mirror. Hart stood on the balcony, hands on the rail, his gaze on the motel sign as if it contained a crossword. The redhead Kiera would not have 2 bodies in 2 hours if she had a brain. She had a brain, which meant Hart's timing wasn't random. Ezra put a pin in the thought, like men put pins in walls where maps wait. He drove back toward Street Izzy's because threads wanted twisting into rope, and because Quyen had the look in her texts of someone who needed someone else to be tall near her for a minute. When he got there, the sanctuary had turned from night prayers into logistics. People lined up for soup. Children practiced being quiet like a sport. May had taken her stole off but left the mic on, letting it catch the noise of an unexceptional kindness and send it up into the rafters where pigeons slept. Sarah sat on the chancel step with her head back, eyes closed, green gaze turned inward like a tuning fork. Quyen leaned against a column, Kiera cuffed to the wooden radiator cover beside her like a portrait of irony. Ezra joined them. Kiera looked at him and his shirt and the rust on his shoes, like a woman deciding if he belonged in her story's extras list. "Felix?" Quyen asked. "Breathing, swearing he'll never drink tea again," Ezra said. "Kettle rig, mesh cap on the vent line. Someone used the smoke detector's piezo to drive a harmonics trick when the tone bounced Sarah's words. I'm just the donkey who pulled the cart." Sarah opened one eye, smiled without showing teeth. "You're my favorite donkey," she said. "Don't tell the drummer." Quyen's phone buzzed. "Hannah, people are calling with green. A woman in Portside says she saw Copper at a recycling center with a bag of foam. A man in Beacon Lane says he sold 4 drone batteries for cash to a pretty girl with police charity patch on her sleeve. And this may be nothing. The Orpheum's liquor rep says their manager Petal never went through onboarding." Quyen texted back. Keep lines open. Green stays green. Kiera shifted her shoulders to ease the pressure of cuff and wood. Am I going to central booking? She asked. Or are we rehearsing an interrogation here first so you can skip your espresso later? You'll get espresso either way, Quyen said. We are a generous city. Don't flatter Harbor, Kiera said. It's a hungry city. That's why this plays. Why? Ezra asked. Not to flatter, to fish. Tell me your thesis. Why do people watch you kill their neighbors? Because we do it with taste, Kiera said. Then, almost kindly, when Ezra made a face, because we tell a story that relieves them of guilt. Our targets are the people you love to hate. The billionaire, the politician, the pastor failed this time, but not for lack of craft. The artist who wastes grant money, the fixer who gets guilty men rehab instead of prison, the cop who lies for his partner, for a loan, for a secret. We provide catharsis. It sounds like revenge, Quyen said. It's editing, Kiera said. And I say we to make you angry because you want to believe this is a mastermind. Producer is a union. We pick a showrunner who gets the tone right, and then we make the city do our marketing. Who picked this season's showrunner? Ezra asked. You? Not me, Kiera said. I don't like to run things I'm not casting. I brought Petal to the club. Someone else hired her. I delivered your mask. Someone else tuned it. I flirted with your altar boy. Someone else printed his clipboard. What do you want? Quyen asked. That you think you get by this. To scare certain men into being careful, and certain women into being careful, and certain institutions into putting locks on doors they should have watched, Kiera said, then shrugged. And to be famous, but only among people whose fame I enjoy. You could have been a director, Sarah said, voice soft, eyes still closed. I am, Kiera said simply. The lieutenant arrived with the kind of tired that looks like authority if you stand back far enough. He looked at Kiera, at Quyen, at Sarah's black cylinder, at Ezra's rust-crusted shoes, and made an administrative face. We're moving her, he said, and we are sealing the church until CSU eats and prays. May came down the aisle, wiping her hands on a towel like a woman who had washed dishes in expensive meetings and refused to lower her standard here. Seal what you like, she said, but if you're removing the presence of God, I insist on a receipt. The lieutenant had the sense to look chastened. We'll work around night prayers, he said. We're not monsters. Not tonight, May said, and squeezed Quyen's hand once. Detective Tran, when you are ready to sleep, I have a cot that smells like chalk and a blanket that has hugged a lot of frightened women. It's here. I don't sleep, Quyen said gently. Not tonight. May nodded like she'd expected that. Like all women had a library of nights they could title, Not Tonight. They walked Kiera to the car. On the steps, she paused and looked up at the steeple as if saying goodbye to a set. You should check your phones, she said. His posts have a schedule he keeps even when he's angry. Who's angry? Ezra asked. Men who don't get their rehearsal, Kiera said. Producers who don't get their close-up. Your unknown is very modern. He loves a schedule, as a is. Quyen unlocked her phone. The city glared back in white and red. The channel had posted, not on video, not on the community tab where the wide eyes and zealots lived, on the stories ephemeral, casual, the language of teenagers and bored professionals commuting with one thumb. A series of frames, each up for a second, stacking into narrative, because that's what we do with frames, even when they are punishingly short. First frame, a green traffic signal. Second, a pair of handcuffs around her wrist. Third, a boat painting in a motel room. Fourth, a badge glinting at a balcony. Fifth, a silhouette of a man standing in a garage, the stutter of a fluorescent light, keeping time like a bad drummer. Sixth, text over black. Next, the cop. Subtlety, Ezra said dryly. A lost art. Who? The lieutenant asked. Reflex, dread made muscled. We don't know, Quyen said, a lie with the outline of a truth. She knew many people it could be. Hart, with his approachable smirk, the IT kid with his same, the lieutenant, if the pattern of ironing hid a comfort with laundering. Her mind offered her Ezra with both palms up, and she slapped the thought down hard because love is just a better brand of bias. Kiera watched the frame flicker out and smiled small. If I were you, she said to Quyen, I'd put a camera on the mirror you use to fix your hair. I don't fix my hair, Quyen said. I know, Kiera said. That's why it works. They put her in the back, shut the door, and sent her to Central with 2 uniforms who wore loyalty like wool. Quyen stood under the steeple that had just survived being turned into a weapon and let herself look up long enough to feel a little something that wasn't exhaustion. Q, Ezra said. Hart, he said. He was at the Rust too fast. Knew the vernacular. Knew Sarah's name. He smiled at the camera like it introduced them. I don't like being 6 inches suspicious of a colleague, but I'd rather be rude. And we will be rude, Quyen said, but not slander on a Tuesday. We pull his cases. We ask IA who's on their board. We check his ring finger in photos. Does he have a 5-year-old or a script? Henning in IA owes me a coffee, Ezra said, because I taught his kid to parallel park with a Crown Vic. Call in the favor, Quyen said, quietly, and have Sarah look at that webcam from the Rust. Kiera's crew has a style. People leave fingerprints not just on glass. Sarah held up the bagged camera. Already on it, she said. There's a custom firmware sticker that's been peeled off badly. I can likely extract the boot logs. If he used a burner, I'll marry it to a MAC address, and from there we elope to a place called Subpoena. Music to my ears, Ezra said. Quyen's phone hummed again with a call this time, not a text. Hannah. We're getting flooded with cop tips, Hannah said without preamble. Half of them are just people who hate cops. The other half have names. I'm sending you a filtered list. I've put yellow on anyone who could be real and green on the ones with screenshots. Bless you, Quyen said. She let the porches she'd lit earlier feed her for a second. Any of the greens mention Hart? 3, Hannah said. One with a clip from a bar cam where Hart's buying a woman with copper hair a drink and letting her play with his badge like it's a guitar pick. Send it, Quyen said. Her chest did a small, unpleasant double beat. We don't accuse on camera. We verify off it. And then? Hannah asked. And then we put a camera where it hurts, Quyen said softly, and we let the truth do its ugly work. She hung up and met Ezra's eye. We're not going to sleep. We weren't anyway, he said. We're going to Orpheum? We're going to Orpheum, she said. Kiera delivered a mask there. Petal Kiera brought a pouch. The manager's no longer shy. I'd like to see who sits in the back booth Thursday nights. He is not a safe. Want me to ask Park for a lecture on what organophosphates do to attackers when the wind shifts wrong? Ezra asked. It would be a shame if the producer caught a cold. Let's not kill him by accident, Quyen said. Let's film him alive on accident. They split. Ezra to IA and the Rust's footage. Sarah to the lab, to sing to a camera until it confessed. Quyen to Central to put her eyes on Kiera in a room where a camera tells you how honest you are. Central smelled like lemon and power. Kiera sat in interview 2 with her hands unfolded, cuffs off now but dignity on. She looked at the mirror in the wall and smiled as if she were checking her lipstick. Quyen sat across, set her phone face down, and folded her coat over the chair back like she wouldn't need it soon because she intended to finish. "You're not lawyering up," Quyen observed. It wasn't a question, but it asked. "I am the lawyer," Kiera said. "I passed the bar. I keep my license like a charm in a pocket. I'm not your average extra. I have lines." "Who taught you the tone trick?" Quyen asked. "An artist," Kiera said. "One who made sculptures that hummed when the city walked past. He stopped getting grants. He got bitter. Bitter men make good teachers." "The artist?" Quyen said. "On the list." "You're learning," Kiera said. "We'll have you in a writer's room in no time." The door opened. The lieutenant stuck his head in like a man who knows the scene is better without him, but wants to make sure the play is still his theater. "We're live to Orpheum," he said. "They produced their manager. He has thoughts." "Let's hear them," Quyen said. She stood, looked at Kiera. "Don't go anywhere," she said as a joke, "because sometimes you need to pretend you're light for a second." Outside, the bullpen glowed with clocks. On a monitor, Orpheum's owner-manager, a man with a face like a punched cannoli, squirmed in his office chair. "And I didn't know she was not on payroll," he said to a detective off camera. She had a smile. She had references. "The city is full of girls with patch sleeves who want to serve drinks to men who tip like mistakes." "Does he say who recommended her?" the lieutenant asked the room. "Yeah," the off-camera detective said, tapping the screen with a pen. "He says a detective recommended her. Said she was trustworthy and good for optics." "Name?" the manager coughed. "Hart," he said. "Detective Liam Hart." The bullpen cooled by 5 degrees. Someone's coffee made a sound like surprise. The lieutenant looked at Quyen. Quyen looked back, Sarah's words in her ear. "You hear that?" Quyen heard it. The click of a frame sliding into place. On her phone, Unknown wrote like a man blowing smoke rings for himself. "See, we don't write fiction. We write reporting." She typed without thinking. "Reporting includes correction. No bubble this time. Just a new story, posted 5 seconds ago." The cop frame replayed with a new overlay, a badge number, hearts, and a time. Thursday, 8 p.m. "Schedule holds," Ezra texted. "Hart's alibi for tonight is holes with a side of cologne. Henning says whispers, but no paper. He's sloppy, not stupid." Quyen typed back, "Sloppy is good. Sloppy leaves thread." She looked through the glass at Kiera, who sat with her hands on the table like a woman preparing to push away a plate she didn't order. Kiera looked at the mirror and, for the first time, her smile slipped. Not because she'd been caught, because the show had gotten ahead of her in a way she did not like. "Your union pick him?" Quyen asked when she returned. "Or did he audition?" "Audition," Kiera said. "Men like him only ever audition." "Then I'll see him at call time," Quyen said. "And I'll bring a camera that doesn't love him." Kiera tilted her head. "You think cameras love people?" "They do if you ask them to," Quyen said. "But you can teach them not to." She stood, the decision like a coat settling on her shoulders. "Tomorrow," she said to the room and to herself, "we cut the green, and tomorrow," Ezra said in her ear, "we make him run a red." Chapter 5. Run the red. Thursday came on like a clock with teeth. Harbor wore the day with that brittle brightness particular to cities that know they've been dared. Screens in deli windows looped the green bulb and the steeple silhouette until commuters moved with the unconscious choreography of people who've seen the same image too many times. On the northbound tram, a kid in a hoodie explained resonance to his grandmother using a soda can and a keychain. A pastor on Gibbs Hill asked his congregation to leave their phones at the door, then collected 6 baskets worth and locked them in his office as if confiscating a particularly persuasive demon. Quyen didn't go home between Wednesday night and Thursday afternoon. She stacked hours in rooms that smelled like coffee and carpet glue, moving her plan from chalk to flesh. Sarah March built a nest of sound at Orpheum, the speakeasy on Barrow Street where velvet curtains hung like polite lies. She arrived with a case of gear and the posture of a musician who knows the room is an instrument. She set small phase cannons under banquettes, a bigger one above the back booth where the green light liked to pool in a low theater haze, and 2 angels, little inverted emitters, tucked high in the crown molding so that anyone trying to sing a poison key would find their note swallowed whole. Dr. Leon Park came with a silver tray and a wicked smile. "Visualize, or it isn't real," she said, revealing 3 atomizer bulbs filled with an oxime-laced reagent that would fluoresce blue wherever organophosphate cousins kissed air. She'd also packaged the antidote in auto-injectors labeled as if they were pens. "If someone gets inventive," she said, "stab thigh, hold, count to 10 like you're persuading a child to apologize." Hannah Lay arranged a live uplink from Orpheum's mezzanine and rehearsed a lower third that would refuse to be sensational and still make numbers. She sent a camera op with a shoulder rig and a sense of humor and told him, "Don't love anyone through your lens." Ezra Pike worked the edges like the tide, quiet where it mattered, loud where noise made cover. He got I.A. Henning to drift near Barrow in a car that didn't look official. He had uniforms who looked like patrons share shawarma in a doorway across the street. He borrowed 2 plain clothes from a precinct that didn't owe Hart anything and told them, "Do not be heroic, be present." Kiera Vance Petal wore a city hoodie and sat handcuffed to a table in Central. She watched Quyen and the lieutenant through the glass with that interested calm that seemed native to her. When Quyen pushed in with coffee, Kiera cocked her head. "You're going to need me," she said. "I'm going to use you," Quyen said, not unkindly. "There's a difference." "Use me to call him," Kiera said. "He'll pick up if it's my number and he thinks I'm impatient." "He," Quyen said, flat. "The showrunner," Kiera said. "You call him producer like it's one man. It's a chair. Tonight's occupant is punctual and vain. He likes to be the first into the room and the last out because he believes in entrances and he fears exits." "Name," Quyen said. Kiera looked at the glass, at her reflection, becoming a third woman in the room. "Aurora Vale," she said finally. "Not the Aurora you're thinking of, the philanthropist. That's another season. This one is public relations. A fixer who got tired of fixing for men who didn't deserve it. She calls this social correction and believes her own press." "Unknown," Quyen said softly, remembering the texts, the schedule, the tone that loved order. "She's your texter," Kiera said. "Hart is an episode. Aurora is the season." "It's she." Quyen held out the coffee. Kiera took it with both hands and smiled into the steam like it loved her. "Do you want me to call her now?" Kiera asked, and say we have the mask? Or do you want to let her sweat until she looks good under sweat? She doesn't sweat, Quyen said. She glows. Call her and tell her Petal is impatient. Tell her Orpheum's manager is crying truth, and that the back booth looks like a stage also true. Tell her we will be ready at 8. And Hart? Kiera asked. How will you make a cop arrive on cue? We won't, Quyen said. He'll do it himself. He recommended you to Orpheum. He thinks this is his room. Men who think a room is theirs always come back to see if the chairs still know their names. Kiera dialed. The line clicked. She said, lightly, Darling, we're ready, and listened. Her mouth tightened at the corners. Of course, she said. 8 on the dot. The green will pop. She hung up, eyes hooded. She's close. How close? Quyen asked. On the street, Kiera said. That means upstairs across the way, not the room itself. She doesn't like to be touched by consequences. Good, Quyen said. Then we put consequences where she stands. Orpheum, 6:45. The room had that pre-show hush that comes not from silence, but from curated noise. A crooner did scales behind the bar. The cocktail waitresses practiced carrying empty trays with dignity. The manager, face like a punished cannoli, dabbed at his forehead with a bar napkin and murmured prayers to 2 gods, liquor licenses and plausible deniability. Sarah tuned the room to stillness. She set the phase cannon's indicators to barely on. When she panned through 17.3 kilohertzes at whisper, the glassware shuddered like a dream disturbed, then settled as the inverse curled around it. Park painted the underside of the back booth's tabletop with her reagent. The wood glowed faintly when she hit it with a pocket UV. If anyone sneezes product near here, she said, we'll get a midnight blue sky. Ezra walked in 10 minutes before 7, wearing the suit that made him look like a man who had learned to be kind after being something else. He took the back of the room, perennial bulk in the penumbra. Quyen came in next, coiffed only by circumstance. Her face that cameras liked because it refused to pose. Hannah's camera op lifted a hand. She nodded once. Plan, Ezra said under the music. We let them arrive, Quyen said. We let them set. We don't stop the scene. We stop the script. Hart will bring his whistle or his phone app or his clip, or Aurora will sing from above with a transmitter hidden in the light valence. Sarah will choke it. Park will paint it. Hannah will show the city how to look at the trick without falling for it. And she let the sentence hang like a coat on an empty hook. And you? Ezra asked. I talk, Quyen said simply. On his channel, on ours. I take his frame and say what I want to say in it. I look at the camera he intended to love him, and I make it listen to me. You brought her, Ezra said, glancing toward the bar where a woman in a navy jumpsuit sat with a seltzer and a gaze sharp enough to strip paint. Aurora Vale. She had that tailored minimalism of people who have fired stylists. Her hair was a precise black page boy. She wore a small stud in one ear and a larger stud in her certainty. If self-belief were cologne, you could smell her from the door. She brought herself, Quyen said. I merely left the door unlocked. Aurora's eyes made a slow lap of the room, not predatory appraising. She saw Quyen and let the edges of her mouth rise a degree. She didn't wave. She tilted her head like a woman acknowledging another in a gallery opening where a scandal has been hung. At 7:50, Hart arrived with the strut of a man who doesn't believe in umbrellas. His hair was damp and obedient. He wore a jacket that wanted to be gray and a shirt that wanted to be white. He shook the manager's hand as if it were a custom and took the back booth like it was owed. He sat where the camera angle would make him noble. He looked at Aurora across the dark, nodded once. She didn't nod back. Sarah's angels hummed inaudibly. Park's pocket UV cast no glow yet. Hannah's rig streamed a private feed to the van where her producers bounced and frowned and sometimes both. The Orpheum pianist, sensing a story even though no one had told him, began to play the kind of tune that lets characters talk. Quyen slid into the booth opposite Hart without asking. She put her badge on the table like a napkin. She didn't smile. "Hart," she said. "Tran?" he said. Easy, the syllable a coin flipped and caught. "You enjoying the show?" "It's not one I'd subscribe to," she said. "We should talk." "We are," he said, as if he were harmless. He glanced at the ceiling. The little speaker mounted above the booth looked like any ceiling speaker. Quyen knew it now, Sarah's angel. Hart didn't. "About last night," he said. "At Rust. I came to make sure you had backup. We share witnesses in this city whether we like it or not." "You recommended Petal to Orpheum," she said. He shrugged. "Lots of girls?" The manager asked for someone who could smile without falling out of her dress. "I preferred her to the kind who fall." "And your badge," she said. "Do you always let strangers play with it like a guitar pick?" Hart's face didn't change. His pupils narrowed one size. "Is that a crime?" he asked mildly. Badge fondling. "Does IA have a checkbox for that now?" "They have a box for men who train criminals with authority," she said, "who wear their ring and invent a 5-year-old because they think it makes people safe enough to hand them what they need." That one landed. Hart's jaw twitched, a muscle flicking like a tail. "You talking about yourself?" he asked, soft. "You invent stories too, Tran. It's how you get people to tell you things. I watched you on Hannah Lay. I admired the pitch." Across the room, Aurora lifted her glass, sipped. Her eyes were on the mezzanine, where Hannah's camera sat like a bird that has decided not to sing yet. Quyen's phone trembled. "Unknown. You look good in low light." She put the phone face down. "Aurora," she called across the dark, "would you like to come closer? I hate shouting." Aurora didn't startle. She took her time finishing the sip, then stood and crossed the room with unhurried purpose. Her heels didn't sound like weaponry. They sounded like punctuation. "Detective," she said. Taking the chair, the manager pulled like a complicit stagehand. "Petal sent her greetings?" "She sent your name," Quyen said. "Unlikely," Aurora said, amused. "True," Quyen said evenly. "She warranted it." Aurora's gaze flicked to Park's silver tray, as if it were an hors d'oeuvre that bored her. "You've turned the room," she said to Sarah, not looking at her. "It's flatter. Dead air where there used to be shimmer." Sarah, who had taken a seat at the bar and was pretending to enjoy seltzer, smiled. "We tuned it for human speech," she said. "Yours included." "That's all this is," Aurora said. "Speech. Words arranged with taste. We burn through secrets like driftwood. We generate heat." "You generate funerals," Quyen said. "Elegance," Aurora corrected. "Not that you would notice. Your ethics are earnest. It's charming." Hart, who had been watching the women like a man who isn't sure whether he has been invited to the right party, shifted and palmed a little mesh-mouthed fob from his pocket under the table. Sarah's angel didn't wait for him to purse his lips. It put out its kiss of nothing. The phase canceled before Hart could breathe. Park's UV caught a faint blush near his cuff reagent live on cloth. "Don't, Liam," Aurora said without turning her head, the way a director says it to an actor about to step on a joke. You'll only make yourself obvious. Hart's mouth flattened. You called me by my first name, he said. No humor in it now. Which is intimate for a woman who won't nod. In my heart, I nod at the camera, Aurora said. Hannah's camera op, hearing his medium invoked with the solemnity of religion, glanced at Quyen. Quyen nodded. He went live. Hannah's voice filled 100,000 living rooms at once. We're here at Orpheum, where a scheduled show just met a scheduled city. On the producer's channel, a thumbnail ticked green. A frame, the back booth at Orpheum. A caption, live. The audience count bloomed like an infection. Let's get this done, Aurora said, pleased. Detective, give me your thesis. You're the showrunner, Quyen said. Hart is your cop, Kiera your pedal. The artist is the bitter man who taught you music. You run a union of producers and call it a movement. You believe terrorized neighborhoods are better governed than bored ones. You tell yourself you're shaving rot from wood and you don't notice the house burning because you like the light. Aurora's mouth curled, pleased despite herself. Points for cadence, she said, and for the house. Here's my correction, Quyen said, and the word did what corrections do to people who love press. It made Aurora lean forward to enjoy her own firmness. You think your audience loves catharsis. They actually love participation. They came to me when I asked them to choose adulthood. They called Hannah. They put their porch lights on. We rehearsed a different ending. Which is? Aurora asked. Detective, don't make me beg for spoiler. We show your tricks on camera while they fail, Quyen said. We hold the note and it doesn't open a door. We paint your air blue when it tries to pretend it's clean. We put your cop next to your fixer and we ask the room if this is what they thought they wanted to watch at dinner. Aurora's eyebrows lifted delicately. And if it is, then we name them to themselves, Quyen said. And we proceed. Proceed to what? Hart said, brittle now. You gonna arrest me in front of a city? Make me your cop episode, play my badge on loop, think that sticks? And in. You recommended a plant to a crime scene, Ezra said from the shadow. Not moving forward, voice carrying anyway. You provided access. You arrived conveniently at Rust Motel. Your phone's Mac married to a webcam that watched a boy try not to die. I.A. Henning is downstairs, Liam. He brought paperwork and the patience to sit through commercials. Hart's hand moved reflexively toward his pocket where his phone vibrated. Park's UV glinted on his cuff again. Sarah's hand twitched toward the angel's dial. Aurora's gaze slid up, past Quyen's shoulder, to the mezzanine where Hannah's camera, Saturday. We are making good television, she said, almost tender. Now, Act 3. He's save ban beat save ban beat us. On the producer channel, comments bloomed. Hearts, vomit emojis, cop hat gifs. A username called Cutothacase wrote, "Lol, expose him already." Another called Neighborhood Watch typed, "Turn on your porch lights, record everything. Send to Red Talk line." The city, trained and untrained, was doing both shows at once. Quyen lifted Sarah's velvet puck and clicked twice. 17.3 kilohertzes slid under everything like glass. People winced, then adjusted. Somewhere above them, on a nearby roof or in an office across the street, a small transducer sang back. Sarah's angels caught it and laced it with their negative. The song died like a moth smothered between palms. Park snapped her UV on and played it over the table. The wood at Hart's elbow fluoresced, his cuff faintly. The underside of the tabletop, staining heavier where someone had dusted earlier, Kiera's Tuesday visit perhaps, leaving a ghost. Liam Hart, Quyen said, and the room's acoustics did her the favor of holding her voice gently and then setting it down in front of him. You are under arrest for conspiracy, endangerment, tampering, and pending every noun Dr. Park gives me more. You can either stand up and walk as a man who understands his legs, or you can make it theater, and we will make sure the lighting is unflattering. It have day. Hart looked at Aurora, and for the first time, she spared him nothing. She didn't even look bored. She looked finished. He saw it. That awful adult recognition. He stood and put his hands on the table, a decision with no grace left. Ezra came in then, slow and sure. I.A. Henning slipped out of a booth like he'd been grown there and clicked the cuffs like a sentence's period. Hannah's camera stayed on Aurora because she understood love the way Quyen had instructed. Do not give it to the man taking the stage away from consequence. You think this ends me, Aurora said, mild. You think every seizing of a prop is a disarming and not a costume change. Body. And all know who see. I think seasons get canceled, Quyen said. Aurora's phone glowed in her hand. She didn't look at it. She looked at Quyen. You really don't want to check your church, she said. May's church. You think you saved that last night, and that saves it tonight. But green means run in some languages. Did you check the language of her boiler, of her choir loft, of her faithful? Quyen kept her face a face. She had checked. She had made Sarah put a passive sensor in Street Izzy's vents and May's apron and the choir rail, a canary that texted 0 seconds and 1 second to March's watch. Sarah lifted her wrist remotely. Green. No song. Quyen exhaled in a way no lens would see. You make a beautiful villain, Quyen said, but the city is learning to be boring again. That's what will hurt you. They'll choose it like fiber, and they'll tell each other to choose it, and your audience will begin to drift, because you aren't special without their fingers. Aurora blinked, the smallest break in her composure. It wasn't fear, it was irritation at the notion of being unspecial. Hannah's voice, gentle and knife-sharp, came in from the mezzanine. Aurora Vale. The city knows your name. She didn't say it like a triumph. She said it like a ledger. The producer channel's chat started to fracture in a way only moderators can see. The hearts didn't stack as neatly. The diatribes got longer and therefore less shareable. A few users typed, "Turn it off," and other users told them to grow up, and the fight itself became the content, and the content got grimy and unfunny. Aurora stood. "We're done," she said, and for once it wasn't a line, it was logistics. "You'll never stop this. You can be clever tonight and maybe next Thursday, but the frame remains, people crave it, and there are more unions, more showrunners, more pedals who love being seen." "You may be right," Quyen said. "The honesty oddly crueler than any threat. That's why we teach our city to prefer the porch to the stage. It takes longer. It's duller. It is, as you say, adulthood. Beiler's Steeple last and any on nose." Aurora turned. Ezra took her elbow. She let him. She didn't fight, because that would have been a scene, and she had lost control of the scene. As they moved, her phone, still in her hand, buzzed a last time. Unknown sent one more message. Quyen didn't see it. Sarah, who had drifted close like a quiet tide, did. See you next season, it read. Different city, different light. Sarah looked at Quyen. Quyen nodded like a person who has heard that note before. He's right, she said later, in the alley where the air smelled like wet velvet and escape. Different city, different light. We can't be every porch. No, Sarah said. But you taught this one to leave theirs on, end quote. The rest was paper that turned into nights. Hartzlocker coughed up 2 whistles, a 3D printed nozzle that matched the wound rose on Alastair Crane's chest, and receipts for drone batteries purchased in cash near Beacon Lane. His phone married itself to 3 webcams, boot logs, and a private channel where producer accounts had been created and tested before each live. He pled not guilty at arraignment and looked smaller in the courtroom than he had under Orpheum's hush. Aurora Vale's laptop, seized with a warrant written by a judge who had watched his daughter tremble in front of a live stream she'd pretended not to watch, contained decks with names like Narrative Hygiene and Audience Evangelism. It contained a document labeled Season 2 with a list: the broker, the teacher, the doctor, the mother. It contained a spreadsheet titled Growth, with a column called Deaths Avoided Because It's Good Television. Her lawyers argued speech. Park's blue fluoro images argued breath. A jury would later be asked to choose which language they believed. Kiera Vance made bail, and then made another choice, one that surprised even her. She gave Quyen the names of 3 places: an art studio that hummed, a pastor who had declined but kept the card, a fixer who had provided legal templates for consent videos meant to be waved later like a flag. She walked into that central room again and looked at the mirror and said, I liked being good at something. I didn't like who it made me stand near. Find something else to be good at, Quyen said. Preferably a thing that leaves people hungry only in the way soup does. Kiera smiled, a real one that tugged unevenly like a stitch. Your metaphors are terrible, she said, but okay. Felix delivered noodles in the rain and then stopped because his hand shook on stairs. He took a job at Street Izzy's pantry rolling rice into trays and telling kids how to carry weight on a bike. Sometimes he carried their phones for them during night prayers and hid them in his own backpack so they'd forget to retrieve them, and some part of them would sleep an hour they didn't mean to. May preached neighbor again and again until the word rubbed shiny and then deeper. When she took her mic apron out, she still checked the phone because adulthood is also paranoia wisely applied. She kept Sarah's little angel behind the pulpit like a charm. Sarah March went back to the lab and then to a studio where a jazz singer had fired her drummer and needed someone to tune the room. She built an app that listened for unkind frequencies in crowded spaces and pinged you gently if the air was wrong. She called it Porch. Dr. Park wrote a sober paper about micro-encapsulated aerosols and the ethics of design. No one clicked it except the people you want to click such things. She spoke at a conference where she said, You can't make the world safe by making it noiseless. You can only make people hear the difference. Hannah Lay did a show called Porch Lights on Thursday nights. Sometimes it got fewer numbers than the murder videos used to get. Sometimes it got more. The graph wasn't the point. The line running through it was, Quyen slept for 3 hours in a row one night and dreamed a decent dream where no one filmed anything that hurt them. She woke and didn't apologize to the day for sleeping. On the second Friday after Orpheum, she stood on Street Izzy's steps with a paper cup of decent coffee and watched the neighborhood move through morning. A man with a dog whose legs were too short and too fast, a woman carrying a plant like an apology, a kid whistling badly and loving it. Ezra came up beside her, leaned on the rail in a way that had frightened Wood in less decent places. "We're not done," he said, because he knows the kind of quiet you can't afford. "We're never done," she said, "but we made an episode where nobody died. Green stayed green," he said, "because the city learned to stop at red," she said, "not because someone told them to, but because they decided to." Ezra sipped his coffee and made a face like a boat that knows it's aimed into weather and likes the feel of it. "Hannah's asking for you," he said. "She wants you to come on and talk about the ethics of porch lights." "I hate that phrase," Quyen said. "It sounds like a magazine front of book." "I told her you'd say that," he said. "She said to tell you her graphics team has a new icon, a traffic light that blinks like a heart." Quyen smiled, small, private. She looked up at Street Izzy's bent finial and the triple slat louver, familiar now the way a freckle becomes beloved. The city around her made that sound cities make when they are choosing not to be cruel for a while. A gull cursed a fairy like an old friend. Somewhere, Sarah tuned a room and someone mistook it for magic, and she didn't correct them. Her phone buzzed. Unknown, a different number, a different carrier, a different arrogance had nothing to say yet. She let it buzz. She turned the screen face down. May opened the door and leaned on it like a woman fitting herself into the day. "Detective," she said, fond. "Breakfast?" "Always," Quyen said. She thought of Aurora's last text and of seasons and of different cities with different lights. She thought of porch bulbs and red bulbs and the green the heart makes when it goes on beating despite scripts. She thought of the frame and the face you show to it. "Let's eat," she said, and stepped inside. And it was not a stage. It was a room. It held